What are your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it! Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy! Now what do you think?
You're listening to the Mystic Menagerie Podcast, your regular descent into the world of alternative entertainment, art, and culture. Bolt the door, light the fire, and pour yourself a glass of Virgin Rouge, and let your hosts, Dan Baines and Lord Freddie Valentine, guide you through the Stygian depths of your darkest delights. Warning. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Mystic Menagerie Podcast. Today is Thursday the 29th of January and this is our first show of 2015, isn't it, Freddie?
That's right, we're back and we're ready. It's a new year and lots of exciting things ahead for the year, you know, and like I say, all the support we had last year, the podcast was a new thing. It's inspired us. We're very charged up with things now. There's a lot of good stuff coming ahead, isn't there, Dan?
There certainly is, yeah. I've got a good vibe about 2015. New Year's Eve came and I was glad to get rid of 2014. And this year is going to be brilliant, I think, both for us personally and mostly, more importantly, for the Mystic Menagerie Podcast in this new format that we've got.
Definitely. I mean, the format so far, we've never had any trouble filling the show. You know, it's always been easy to find stuff. And this episode, we've got some really exciting stuff as well, haven't we? And have a great interview and have a special guest. But rather than the guest being with us, you know, in the podcast, we've got a special interview with somebody, which is coming up later on the show, haven't we? We have, yeah. And the great thing about that is it was something that never happened with the magazines. When we did the magazine version, people weren't very forthcoming with giving us things to review and give our opinion on. But since we've been doing the podcast, I was actually approached by a publisher in Sweden, and they just said, we've listened to your podcast and we think it's really great, and would you like to review one of these books for us? And that was it. That was at the beginning of the week. Yesterday I hopped on the train to London and went and met Oskar, the author of the book, and I did a sort of 40-minute interview with him at a very cool location in London, which we'll obviously listen to later on in the show. But as you know yourself, when we had the magazine, we never used to get offered anything, really, did we? We had to go hunting for literally everything. Definitely, it's like getting blood out of a stone. I mean, some people just send some stuff across to reviewed, which I'm grateful for, but generally people sort of, they didn't really contribute much. I mean, there was some contributions early on, but it's very hard to get contributions, But with the podcast, we seem to be getting a lot of contributions from different directions, not from the usual. It's not people just sending in magic tricks and things like this. We're getting more general interest things and things that fit into the whole theme of the podcast, which makes it more interesting that way. Yeah, well, and just realised, for people who are listening for the first time to this show, obviously there's another 4 episodes previous to this, and there's another 13 magazines in PDF format before this. But we failed to actually introduce who we actually are. So I'm Dan Baines, and this is my co-host, Freddie Valentine. Yep, hello, yeah. And we've been doing this, we're doing the magazine for a few years now, hasn't it? About 4 years, maybe 5 years, I think. It's quite a while. Yeah, it's always been to a limited audience, but the power of podcasting has made sure that we're out there and getting heard now. So it's like the new sort of pirate radio. Definitely. And we're going to focus on the weird, the unusual, the macabre, the bizarre, the spooky, the supernatural, the weird and wonderful, basically. So anything that's pretty unusual, and we're not going to just try and feature the same things everybody else does, like if it's films and stuff. We're trying to look for the stuff that maybe introduce you to things that are a bit weird, that may have slipped under the radar. So hopefully, by listening to the podcast, you'll discover lots of things as well as be interested in what's going on, So we're trying to push the weirdness out there, make the world a weirder place, I think. That's what our mission is. Yeah, I think for first-time listeners, I mean, we essentially fall under the bizarre magic bracket, which is sort of mystery entertainment. So, you sort of your darker side of magic, more geared towards storytelling than actually sort of your typical Paul Daniels type of magic, of sawing ladies in half. There's a lot more to it than that. But obviously, because Bizarre Magic attracts the type of people who like the darker side of entertainment, as Freddie says, we cover everything from movies, books, TV programs, paranormal, what's happening in the news in the world of paranormal, cult subjects, music. We actually cover everything. It's a magazine in audio format, and we want to keep it as varied and diverse as possible. And the last 4 issues have just proven that we're able to do that successfully.
I feel we've done what we set out to do, and also the guests we've had have been good. The subjects, we never find trouble. There's no trouble us finding a subject to discuss because there's so many weird things we're interested in ourselves. So
that's it.
It's sort of stuff that we're interested in. So, and luckily, people seem to be interested in the sort of same weird things that we are. So we don't feel alone now.
No.
We feel that there's people out there that can sympathise, that are part of the same group, So it's good for us as well. We are not alone in this world. There are people who like weird things just as strange as we do. So that's very comforting to know as well.
Yeah, I think if anything, it's becoming more and more fashionable. So hopefully more people will find this and listen in to us. And I know on the previous show, we were talking about getting a Kickstarter up and running for people who wanted to back the show. But we actually discovered something as an alternative to Kickstarter, something called Patreon, which for people who back or listen to other podcasts will probably know about. And it's like Kickstarter, but it's more long term. Whereas normally with Kickstarter you do a 30-day campaign, and then you take your money and hopefully not run, but put it to good use. With Patreon, it's more of a subscription service, so you can pledge a certain amount of money per show, and it will go to me and Freddie to maintain the show and to, get guests, travel around, do interviews, obviously do some renovations around the Mystic Menagerie Mansion, because it's looking a bit sort of shabby at the moment, isn't it, Freddie? But we like it that way.
Definitely. I mean, the upholstery and that coffin over there, and the sort of red velvet interior, it's a bit sort of worn. There's some weevils in it.
There is.
I'd rather get them cleaned out.
That's what Paul was in last week. That was what Paul was in the last show, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think he went home with a weevil in his ear. I don't think he's realised that, but it's still there. I saw it sticking out as he went. But if we can get that reupholstered, that would help.
It would.
But the thing is, we can offer really interesting incentives for people that do take part in the Patreon. The Patreon account. What it's going to be is there's going to be things which you can't get elsewhere. I mean, you will be able to get over the magazine through the Patreon and some of my books, but also there's going to be special things, isn't there, Dan? Like we're going to offer, like maybe a special edition of the magazine you can only get through Patreon.
Yeah.
And a few, maybe we're thinking of possibly having a day out in London with myself and Dan, seeing some of the weird locations.
Yeah, we've got to get it together yet. I've registered for Patreon. There is a Mystic Menagerie page, although nothing's up and running just yet, because we've just got to decide on what the sort of awards are going to be. But if you imagine when we was in a magazine format, you'd spend between £3.50 and £4 on a magazine, and you'd go away and read that. If you look at Patreon as the same, with the same idea, so you can per show, if you wanted to contribute £3.50 or £4 to the show, then obviously you get the show. But we're also thinking of creating a special members-only section. So you'd get the normal 2 hours of the Mystic Menagerie show, and then you'd be sent via a link, which will have a password, to an additional probably 30 to 45 minutes where we're going to discuss things that would be more sort of more secretive, I suppose, if that's the right word.
More specialised, and maybe there's some things that may be 18 rated in that section, possibly, but extra things, unusual weirdness, more weirdness.
Yeah, we might even have sort of interviews with well-known celebrities, and we'll save certain sections of the interview for the additional sort of members-only section. So if you become part of the Patreon campaign and you go for that section, then you're going to feel part of a special select group of people who me and Freddie are only sharing our secrets with you, basically.
Definitely. And we intend to look at the people that do actually fund the show and get behind us that way. We do intend to reward them in certain ways by having certain things coming up, like, they can get the magazine, there'll be special editions of the magazine, special books and things like this, extra half hour of the show, a special show. and other bits and pieces along the way. So it's going to be consistently surprises along the way and little things that just those people can get hold of. So we want you all to feel part of it, and if you're one of the subscribers or the patrons of Patreon, then you will be part of it. There will be a lot of things you will have, and you'll be included more than the people that are just casual listeners. So if you want to get involved, that's the way to do it, and we would appreciate anyone getting involved, and you will be rewarded with some very exciting things.
So yeah, watch out for Patreon in February. We'll have more news on that in the next show. One of the main reasons we actually thought of giving away the magazine, previous copies of the magazine, as part of the Patreon campaign is because, our beloved government here in the UK have brought in some form of new legislation which clamps down on anyone selling digital goods. So that could be music, magazines, books, and more than anything, it really affects you, doesn't it, Freddie?
It does, really. I mean, a lot of my sales of books have been overseas, outside, out of the UK and stuff. So it makes it incredibly difficult for me. I mean, there are people that sell them for me, and it's the same with some of the music that I bought out. Some of that, as a company, it's on iTunes, and there's a company that takes care of that. And I'm assuming that they're taking care of that side of things, but it does make things very difficult for me. Yeah,
if you're selling things direct, like we did with the Mystic Menagerie, and I used to sell some of your books on the Lebanon Circle website. This new legislation means that anyone selling digital goods to anyone in the EU from the UK has to charge VAT at the rate in that specific country. So I can't remember how many countries there are in the EU. I think it's something like 23. So you've got to apply 23 different rates of VAT, to these purchases, which is absolutely, I just can't get my head around it. And the way they've done it, well, the reason they've brought it in is because of companies like Amazon, who are based in Luxembourg and obviously only paying 3% tax. They've brought it in to combat those big companies, but without obviously thinking about it properly. They're actually penalising the small scale sellers like ourselves.
Yeah, we're going to get screwed by it, really.
Yeah, so until we can figure out how to get around it, or get our magazines out there some other way, and so obviously Freddie's books as well. The way it's going to be done at the moment is going to be through Patreon on the Patreon for the Mystic Menagerie. And what you'll do is you'll back Patreon, say £3.50 per show, and you'll also get the pick of a previous one of the back issues of the magazine as well. So you're essentially getting it for free. Therefore, we're slipping through the tax net on that one, I think.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
But that's the way to do it. And it's a shame because the magazine is something that's a consistent seller, but through the Patreon you will be able to get hold of the magazine, either individual ones. If there's an issue you got missing, you can get that one. Or if you put a certain amount of money you can pay, you can get the whole lot. So, they will not be lost forever. So, they still will be available through that. So, yeah, if you want to get hold, if you haven't got any of the magazines, want to get hold of a lot of them, you still will be able to. But we're just getting this Patreon thing up and running, and all will be revealed in the coming months.
That's it. I mean, I know we've got a lot of global listeners to the podcast, and obviously UK tax issues is probably going to bore the tits off you. However, there's a lot of UK magic companies that purely base their business on digital sales of books and DVDs and digital downloads of tutorials. So obviously it's going to affect them a lot more than what it's affected us. I mean, I wasn't even aware of it till I heard about it on another podcast, and then I just Googled it and found it, and there it was. So it's slipped under the radar a little bit, and I think if no one's aware of it, by the time April comes for their tax return, it's gonna hit them full on, and it's going to be quite a shock. So if you are listening and you do sell digital stuff from the UK to the EU, you might want to just go and have a look on the customs website and get up to speed on what's happening, because it is it's crap basically.
Yeah, it is. But life is tough in the UK with some of the rules and regulations here. But hopefully there's a way we can still provide this for you.
Yeah.
So I think the Patreon is probably the best way at the moment we can think of still making these things available to people. Without going through the standard route of selling things.
That's it. Well, let's get on with the show. Let's get now we've got all the admin out of the way, and especially the boring tax bit. Let's see what's been happening in our bizarre life.
Robert Clark is the scientist caught between vicious gangsters and the astounding she-monster. Here is a power that frightens the deer in the forest, terrifies fearless dogs. A woman so intriguing that her face and figure fascinate every man.
Both me and Dan have got quite a bizarre life and the sort of things we get up to, you know. And recently myself, there's a couple of things I've been doing. I've been obviously, you know, doing seances, readings, the stuff that I normally do. But I've also, it's been quite strange. I've been, you've heard the theme tune to the show. It's a very dramatic piece of music and it fits in with the theme of the show. Well, I do now where people want me to write some music for their live shows, so like a performer, or for their podcast. You know, if they contact me, there's a lot of pieces of music I've written that are theme tunes, you know, and they're very similar in style, you know. So if someone does email me or contact me through this and they want that service, just tell me what you require and I'll send over some samples, and if you want one for your show, you can choose one. So that's one thing I've been working on lately, creating some music there. So yeah, it's been quite busy, and I've finished a new book as well called Dark Exhibitions.
Yes, yeah.
Which kind of ties in a little bit of Oscar's book, because what it's about is, as people know, is what I do is I have a thing called the Macabre Museum. And I exhibit strange oddities, you know, at carnivals and stuff like this, and I do lectures about them, and people have it for private parties, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it's very unusual sort of artifacts. I was in a magazine, you know, Take a Break's Fate and Fortune magazine,
yes.
2-page colour spread in there.
Yeah.
But the new book is about how people can start doing that. You know, how to sort of get yourself going, how to get hold of the artifacts, how to do this, how to get the, you know, the museum together, and the sort of places that you can actually go and exhibit these, you know, because a lot of people make a mistake when they have a weird artifact. They want to do a magic trick with it.
Yeah.
Which to me seems a bit pointless. You know, you're not going to go to a natural history museum and someone's going to get the dinosaur bones and juggle with them, because you think, hang on a minute, these are like, you know, millions of years old dinosaur bones, and you're doing something as ridiculous as that with them. People are happy to look at things like that. So if you've got a shrunken head, or any strange artifact like that, or a Fiji mermaid, people will happily look at this and read about the history of it. You don't have to do anything. And that's what the book is about. It's about that philosophy behind it. So that's what I've been working on as well. And apart from that, I've been ill lately as well, but I'm a bit better today. You know?
Good.
I've got to have a big lump cut on my leg next month, so hopefully that's all right. You know,
Jeez, was that like an alien implant or something?
Well, yeah, it seems to. I mean, the thing is, I did a bit of self-surgery. This lump was on my leg about a year ago, you know, and being paranoid, I straight thought, oh no, cancer, you know. So I got myself the kitchen knife and hacked it off.
As you do.
As I do, you know, and it was okay. Did my own tourniquet, and it was gone. A year later, the same thing comes back. So now I've got the old crack still with it, you know. So, you know, hopefully it's all right. If not, I will be doing the future podcast via Ouija board. But it seems to be okay. So that's what I've been up to lately, really. And about yourself, then, what's been in your world?
Yeah, well, I've been. It's been a hectic start to the new year, to be honest. I've been sort of getting ready for, obviously, Doomsday, which is coming up in May. It's the first year that I've actually been organising it, having taken the reins from Ronnie. So we've actually got a full lineup now. So nearly 10 lectures and acts for the main day. The Friday night, I think we've already mentioned before, we've got Dr. Diablo's Carnival Macabre. So we've got lots of contortionists, sword swallowing, people hammering nails into faces. On the Saturday, we've got Prof BC coming from the States, Luther Malmberg coming from Canada. We've also got Todd Lamman, Voodoo Mick, Nick Brunger, myself doing a lecture on how to age props correctly, basically, not to make them look too old or too new. So I'll be giving some expert advice away there. We've also got Tracy Wise, who does a crime scene illusion type show, which is going to be very interesting. I've not seen it before.
Excellent.
We've got an exclusive video lecture from Simon Drake, which is a lecture he did a while back, and it was recorded. Someone recorded a copy of it, and only myself and he owns a copy of it, so he's given me permission to show that. So it's an hour of how Simon Drake does some of his great illusions that you'll have seen on the Secret Cabaret back in the sort of the early 90s. It's going to be a really full day, to be honest, and you know, it's going to be great. The poster for it should be out next week. I've been putting a nice poster together which has got all the acts. And I think we've probably got only about 15 or 16 tickets left. Because we've got a lot of new blood coming this year. So all the people who have been coming for the previous 5 years, who've kind of, you know, are sitting on their hands at the moment, waiting to get their tickets later on in the year, you might want to sort of dig deep and get your tickets now, because obviously there's new people coming, and there might not be any spaces left for the old sort of old faithfuls. So, it is a small venue, and you've got to sort of think on your toes on these things.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's a good lineup, isn't it?
It is. It's brilliant. I mean, it's great for me, obviously, being the organiser, that people are still wanting to take part. I felt a bit sort of, I was a bit scared that when Ronnie relinquished his duties as organiser of Doomsday, that he passed it on to me, people are going to think, oh, well, people whose allegiances lie with Ronnie might not bother coming or whatever, but it's as popular as it always has been. So it's nice to know that I've still, I've got everyone's back on Doomsday.
Definitely. It's a bit like Ronnie's George Lucas and you're Disney. That's what it's like.
Yeah,
it's taking it for the next generation.
Yeah. You can't really compare Ronnie to George Lucas though, because George Lucas really screwed up the Star Wars franchise, didn't he?
Oh, he did. Yeah. No,
whereas Ronnie has never screwed up the Bizarre Magic world. In fact, he's done nothing but promote it. All of his life. So
definitely.
Yeah, but anyone who invented Jar Jar Binks cannot be compared to the greatness of Ronnie, I'm afraid.
No, but Ronnie, he's one of the greats. Hopefully we'll have him on the show soon. He's such a top man as well. Very, very interesting person to talk to.
Definitely.
So I say the show that you've got this year is really good, because in fact, Voodoo Mick is someone, as you probably know, is a mate of mine. And he's a fantastic performer. Because when we do our cabaret show, the Carnival Kitsch, we always have Mick on as a regular performer. So he's performed at literally every Carnival Kitsch practically. I think maybe one when he was ill that he didn't, but every single one.
Yeah.
And his mind reading show is fantastic, because he's a very good, very at ease performer. And also he can sing. He's a good singer as well. We used to do this set of songs where you get an acoustic guitar and do sing-alongs. And it could be anything from Westlife to Adam and the Ants. All these songs would come out, and then next minute he's reading minds. So he's a multifaceted performer. So he brings his guitar, get him to do a medley for you, because he's cool. Very entertaining.
Yeah,
you should have a good show with Mick on there as well, because I can thoroughly recommend his performance. He's an excellent performer.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The other thing I've been sorting out is my new Kickstarter, which is starting hopefully on the 1st of March, and that's the next instalment of A Book at Midnight. So the two previous ones we've had was H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. For anyone who doesn't know what A Book at Midnight is, it's a magic trick where you take two people on a sort of a journey together, and it's a demonstration of almost like psychic synchronicity. It's very cool, even when you figure out how to actually do the trick yourself. It almost feels like real magic when you're doing it yourself, because it's a mathematical effect that doesn't take any mathematical knowledge to actually do it. However, it just happens in your hands, which is great, because that's the way magic should be. It's kind of Definitely. Wow. You wow yourself when you do it for the first time when you're practicing. So I'm doing the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle edition next. So which is going to be brilliant, because obviously Conan Doyle covers everything from spiritualism to fairies, Sherlock Holmes, ghost stories, horror stories. There's going to be so much mileage in this Kickstarter. I've got loads of really cool stretch goals lined up, and I've got a good feeling about this one. I think it's probably going to be the biggest Kickstarter I've done yet to date. We've also got, hopefully, Reece Shearsmith is going to be posing for some of the actual pieces of artwork on there as Sherlock Holmes, and he's also kindly texted Mark Gatiss, the chap who writes the current series of Sherlock, to see if he'll autograph some of my prints as well as rewards. So
wow,
yeah, it's nice to get them both on board with that as well. So
brilliant.
Promoting Reece, it, get some good names behind it.
That's fantastic. And Reece is such a top bloke. He's very into the whole dark side of things, as we saw on the show a few months ago. And he's such a nice bloke as well. To get involved with all this stuff as well. It's top.
He is, yeah. It's so kind. You can just literally approach him with some crazy ideas, which I have done in the past, and he very rarely says no. If it's something he's into, he wants to be part of it. And I think the Borley Rectory Indiegogo campaign that funded 2 months ago only proves too well that no matter what size of the project, if it tickles his fancy, he wants to be part of it.
And those sort of people are true artists, people that do things because they believe in it, there's real conviction in their work. When you get someone who does something just for the money, that's when they come across as a bit, but Reese is a true artist in the fact that he's doing things he believes in, and it does the show when people are like that, and people doing things because there's a passion for it.
Yeah. I mean, to sort of tie in with the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle Kickstarter as well, one of the stretch goals will be a limited edition version of the new effect, which I will hopefully be bringing out or be releasing sort of maybe pre-orders or at least sneak peeks of it towards the end of next week, and that is it's called Oculus, Mark of the Bibliomancer. So I don't think I've ever told you about this, have I, Freddie?
No, you haven't. No, it sounds good.
Yeah, I've kind of kept it under wraps. So obviously this is a kind of a little taster for people who listen to the show, because I've not actually put it on my website or on any forums either. But it is it's a bookmark, a bibliomancy bookmark. So for those who don't know what bibliomancy is, it's actually it's almost like fortune telling, but using books. So in the past, people have used like occult books, the Bible. Or you can use any book you want. The main method of doing it was to get something like a ring or something with a hole in it. And it was usually, in Victorian times, it was bookmarks, because bookmarks were very fashionable. You used to give them as gifts. People used to advertise on them. So you'd get your bookmark with your hole in. You'd put it in the book at any page, put the book under your pillow, wake up in the morning, open the book, and look at the word that is circled by the hole on the bookmark, and that word would be your one word of guidance for the day. So it's almost like an old version of a horoscope. Yeah. So some days you'd get a word that obviously doesn't mean anything. Like it could be like a word like the or and or something. However, one day of the week you might get something which is bears some sort of significance on your day, and you would take that word of guidance and it would sort of help you through that day.
Right. And Bibliomancy is weird, because I'll tell you a weird story about that, actually, because there's a friend of mine, she's a Catholic, right, and quite religious, but I think it's more to do with the family bringing her up like that than anything else. But her daughter was very intrigued in the paranormal and wanted to go along to like a psychic night, like an event,
Okay.
So she came to one of my seances and brought her mum with her, and both of them had quite an experience, they saw things, they felt things, And when she went home, she looked in her Bible, she did Bibliomancer, she looked just at a random page, and it said, it's something along the lines of like, it's possible to contact spirits, but you're not allowed to do it. Keep away from basically fortune tellers and people that converse with spirits at the same night. So that was quite weird.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Bibliomancy it's one of those forgotten arts. No one really does it anymore. It was very popular at one point. And people did used to use the Bible for it, especially religious people. But obviously people who belong, who are more sort of, had different beliefs would use different books as well, like, occult books. You can literally use anything. There's lots of different methods of it. It's really something worth Googling and having a look at. Obviously with the version I'm bringing out, the Oculus one, you can actually force the word. So you get the ability to sort of, even though it looks like it's the bookmark is being placed randomly in any book, you've obviously got the ability to force a word, well, actually up to 2 words per bookmark. So if you've got a big audience and you're playing to say, I don't know, 200 or 300 people, you can actually put say 3 or 4 bookmarks into the audience and go round, and you'll be able to force 6 or 8 different words. And the great thing is that all those words that you force will all tie together at the end and actually all be part of a certain paragraph in a book. So as a magical tool, it's going to be very useful. However, if you just want to use it for normal bibliomancy, then the mechanism inside can actually be removed. So you can just use it as a normal bibliomancy bookmark. You don't have to use it for its magic purpose. So it's like a two-way thing, two-way product.
Fantastic, and that's the exciting thing to come out as well. That's because bibliomancy is not. I say it's going to be quite a unique thing, really, within this field. The book I use when I do bibliomancy is Katie Price's Love, Lipstick and Lies.
Oh right, yeah, okay.
It's a very good book to use for.
I bet there's good guidance words in that.
Deep guidance in that, very, very deep. Yeah.
But every word is like less than 6 letters, though.
Exactly, it makes it quite easier. There's nothing I have to look up. There's nothing I have to go on dictionary.com and find out. So.
Yeah, how many times have you woke up and looked up and it just says shag in it? Or
most times, most times. That or in it, that stuff like that. But that's that's a good thing. Bibliomancer is something that's not been looked at so much. And I think that in Bizarre World, that's another thing for bizarrists and people involved in that to look at, really, because I think that's one thing that's been overlooked. There's certain areas that are overdone.
Yes.
And I think, personally, like Jack the Ripper is these days becoming a bit like the smoke on the water of bizarrism. But there's a lot of areas that could be touched which are fascinating, which aren't really explored enough, which adds variety. I mean, it's good to have the standard things in there, but to have things like Bibliomancer and a few other things in there that are unusual gives it much more of a variety to the act, do you know what I mean, or to the show.
Definitely. What I've done is, as well, I've actually made the bookmarks. They're all tooled out of leather as well. So they're all, and there's like 7 or 8 different designs and patterns. I've also got the ability to do custom bookmarks as well that can be embossed with names, dates, patterns. So it will fit into your performance, whatever you're doing. So over Christmas, I've actually been learning leatherworking. So I've been fashioning myself, gimp masks and manacles, and all lovingly embossed with like flourishes and patterns. So
definitely,
yeah. So
if you put playing card revelations on them, I'm sure you could sell them to many of the sort of the older members of the normal magic community. I think they'd be interested in stuff like that. Yeah,
or maybe like a 5-digit number or something.
Definitely.
Yeah, you never know. A magic square on there, maybe. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah.
Possibilities are endless, but I should hopefully have some photographs up on the website and the forums next week. So that's Oculus, a mark of the Bibliomancer, coming soon to a website near you.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, that's one to look forward to. That's the one for 2015. I think that's going to be a big success.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, I hope so. I need a big success at the moment. So
definitely. To me, it sounds like there's some things that come out that are unique or different, or you kind of get from yourself, and that to me is something that is going to stand out as a very unique thing. That's what I think needs. The bizarre magic community needs something like that. Some new things, more different thinking rather than the standard thing. So I think this is going to be quite a revolutionary thing.
Well, I've actually had a Jack the Ripper ban at Doomsday. I'm not going to do cover anything to do with Jack the Ripper, so it's going to be a bizarre magic event that doesn't have any Jack the Ripper references. So. Which is going to be quite nice, because nearly all of them do cover or go into Jack the Ripper at some point. However, there's a lot more to bizarre magic than Jack the Ripper. But, I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because I've obviously with From Hell and Terror of Whitechapel. But obviously, you go for what people want and what sells well. However, now I've done that, it's going to be good to introduce people to new aspects of bizarre.
Definitely. I think Jack the Ripper is good. I mean, it is a fascinating subject. It is a fascinating subject no matter what. But the thing is, because there's so many fascinating subjects out there, it just seems a bit odd that most people focus on the one. Do you know what I mean? It reminds me a bit, if you go into like a guitar shop, there's always a bloke sitting there playing Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
And that is kind of like the Jack the Ripper of the guitar world, because I feel I'm working on a seance, a different kind of one, involving a Victorian serial killer.
Yes.
But one, a baby farmer who's a very evil woman, which I thought, because Jack the Ripper does fascinate me, but I thought so many people have done that I want to go into different areas, do you know what I mean, and offer something new. And although it may not be as well known or as, instantly commercial as Jack the Ripper, I feel that it'd be a bit of a twist on things. So I like things that are a bit unusual. There's so many weird things out there that haven't really been explored as such, I think. There's a wealth of oddness in the world.
There is. And hopefully we can open people's eyes and ears to, new areas of the bizarre world.
Definitely, yeah, because there's so much out there. There's things that people know about. There's a lot of stuff that you only discover. There's so many things. When I'm reading stuff, I find so many weird stories and weird things which are quite unusual. Unusual little quirky things.
Right, so that is our bizarre life and what we've been up to since the beginning of the year. What we're going to do is now we're going to have a quick break, and we're going to come back and do a review of Oskar Hejll's book.
There are things in heaven and on earth beyond the comprehension of man. Call them what you will. The occult, witchcraft, devil worship.
Satan, behold thy supplicants!
Arise and come in, child. Enter for yet another lifetime in the Brotherhood of Satan.
Okay, welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie podcast. Now, we've got our very first review of a book that's been sent in specifically to be reviewed for the podcast. So this is going to be a great review. Me and Freddie have been sent a copy of this wonderful book each, and we've also been sent a preview copy. And the book is Dr. Cagliostro's Cabinet of Curiosities, Investigations of the Unknown, Volume 3. And it's by a chap called Oskar Hejll, and he's from Sweden. And as I say, beginning of the week, he contacted me, or should I say his publisher contacted me, and asked if we'd like to have a copy and review it for the podcast. And ever since, in the space of a week, we've got the books, we've reviewed the book, and I actually went and interviewed Oskar, which we're going to listen to later in the show. And this, as I thought, as soon as I saw this book, I thought this is right up Freddie's alley.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is the sort of area that I'm interested in, and the book itself. I mean, I'm interested in sort of like the Victorian freak show kind of stuff, seeing weird objects, and we both are. Like we said in the very first podcast, about braiding waxworks, the weird stuff there you'd see.
Yeah.
And this is right up my street because this is exactly what I'm into.
It's got everything in it. It's full of amazing pictures and props, which we'll talk about in a moment. But along with all of these different artifacts and creatures, Oskar has written really brilliant, engaging tales, and he's done some wonderful research for each of the sections. I mean, you just look at the table of contents. You go from everything from an astral projection device, Thomas Edison's necrophone. We've got the Yeti, we've got mermaids, ghosts, the Necronomicon, vampire hunting, werewolves, shapeshifters, you name it, Freemasons. It's all in this book. It's just, is not sort of
nothing left out, really.
There's nothing left out. No, it's really. I couldn't think of a word to describe it. Yeah,
no, it's amazing.
He's really gone to town on it.
I mean, reading it, the thing that's impressed me is the amount of work that he's put into it. Do you know what I mean? And the passion for what he's doing here. I mean, I've seen some people in the magic world do similar kind of things to this, but it's nowhere near the level of quality that he's applied to this. I mean, the stories and the research and the pictures, the layout, everything about it is 100%. There's nothing I can say negative about this at all, because the way he's done it, it's to me, it's a subject I'm interested in. So obviously, I'm going to love reading it anyway.
Yeah.
But it's so well put together. The research he's done is so thorough with everything, and it's a fantastic book. It really is. I'd say it's one of the best of its kind, if not the best that I've come across. It's so in depth. It's so it covers everything. It's very what's the word?
Thorough.
I suppose in depth.
Thorough.
Everything.
Thorough.
That's the word I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's very thorough, in what it covers here. I mean, there's a picture. One of the pictures, the Vampire Hunter's kit he's got in there is amazing. It's one of the most incredible vampire hunting kits I've seen a picture of.
It is the best one I've seen, and the great thing is he built that.
Yeah. The man is an immense talent, is what I would say.
Yeah, as we'll find out later on in the interview, he actually used to work for the Swedish Museum, creating replicas of things that they didn't have at the museum. So old devices that were long, sort of decayed, and they just didn't have them anymore. Oskar would actually create replicas of these. So he comes from obviously a historical background, having worked in museums. So he's got the grasp of how to write about something correctly in historical terms, and he's worked in a museum and has created exact props which have been on display to the public. And I suppose the public wouldn't have even known if it was a replica or the real thing, to be honest, because some of the quality of these props is second to none. I'm in awe of them myself, and I'm a prop designer, and some of the stuff he's made is just jaw dropping, and it's all in amazing colour photographs throughout the book.
And the illustrators he's used is backed up with some historical documents, historical pictures, and it's not just. I mean, there is someone else who does this sort of stuff in the magic, and his books tend to be, look what I've got, but this book is really engrossing because the stories, the way he's written it, it's like reading, the old books I said in the 70s when you buy these sort of books about ghosts and weird things. It's like one of those books, it's engrossing. You could sit there all night, you could dip into it, or you could read the whole book. It's done in such a really engaging way to the reader.
Yeah.
You know, it's like looking through a museum, and because the pictures are they're very well taken, the pictures, you know, and there's a lot of clarity in them. So the illustrations for a book like this, it has to have good photographs, and they are superb pictures, but the way he's put together, what he's saying about, you know, the history he gives, the background on each thing, it's so well written, it's so well thought out. It's just a fantastic book, and like I say, there's a lot of stuff in there I'd love to get my hands on, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if any of the listeners are familiar with H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, it's definitely got that feel to it, because it's written from almost like an explorer's perspective. You've got the maps, you know, of the areas where he's been, and the compass, and all the supporting photographs of, like, you know, the red, you know, sort of the Indians who do the shrunken heads, the Javaro Indians in the, you know, Ecuadorian, Peruvian, Amazon jungle and stuff. You know, it's got all the, you know, the charts and the expedition notes, and I think anyone who is involved in bizarre magic, even down to sort of like, you know, role playing, even, you know, you've got a wealth of information, and it's great to see how it, you know, what it looks like when it's done properly. I think that's the main thing I can say.
He's done an amazing job. I mean, it is to me, it's one of the best books I've seen of that kind. You know, and it's a bit like if you went to, you know, you go to somewhere like Brading years ago. You'd look around these exhibitions. You'd buy like a guidebook at the end, and you'd want to read up on these things at home. It's like that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
But the fact that the research he's done, it's a great looking book, great book to read. Anybody's got a vague interest in that, particularly in unusual artifacts, or even if you're interested in art itself, you know, because it is a work of art.
Definitely.
The book itself. I recommend this to anybody who's got even a slight interest in this. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah, one of my favourite things in there is the chainmail collar that you wear when you go vampire hunting. So the vampire can't bite your neck, and there's like this leather neck brace that's covered in like really rusty chainmail, and it's just excellent. You can just imagine, like, if you think about it, that's the first thing you'd want to wear if you went vampire hunting, wouldn't it? You'd want to keep your wrists and your neck well sort of covered up, and
exactly, yeah.
And there's a gun as well that fires stakes. That's got like a little vial of holy water that kind of bolts on the back, and it's got a pressure gauge on it. So there's quite a bit of steampunk. You know, a few steampunk elements in there, but not too steampunk. You know, you don't look at it and think this is a steampunk book, because if it did, I think that would like sort of put you off slightly, because
cheapen it. Yeah,
it would give it a kind of more of a science fiction feel to it. Whereas you actually look at it, and it is like a curated book of factual artifacts and stories from potentially factual expeditions to all these far-flung corners of the earth, searching for all these weird and wonderful creatures, and you know, it's all there, and it's brilliant. The great thing is as well, not only can you get it from Amazon or directly from the publisher in Sweden, I'm also going to be selling it through Lebanon Circle website. So if you keep an eye out, as soon as they come through the post, I'll be sticking them on the website, and I'm only going to have 10 copies initially, but I would recommend snapping this up straight away, because if you want some form of sort of fuel for thought and give you a few ideas, then you can't go wrong by getting Oskar's book.
It's amazing. Another bit I like from it, it's got a section on the magical tools of Dr. John Dee.
Yes.
You know, who was like the astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I. And because I've seen some of the tools that they've got in the British Museum, and I was quite fascinated by the obsidian, you know, scrying mirror and stuff like that. And he's got some fantastic pieces there, you know, to do with John Dee. And he's put about the history, it's all there. And the other thing I like is the lycanthrope's transformation belt. Did you see that?
The transformation belt? I've not seen that. Oh, no.
It's a werewolf transformation belt. It's in the same section as the vampire hunters. That's a wonderful thing as well.
Yeah,
the shape-shifting belt. Yeah, shape-shifting belt.
I've not seen that, but I did see the plaster cast footprints of of someone transforming from human to wolf, and someone's taken a plaster cast of the footprints. So you get the human feet slowly morphing into like dog's paws over a series of footprints. I thought that was pretty cool.
It's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I like the sort of the robotic scorpion. It's like an old Victorian. Yeah. It's like I suppose people would use the word steampunk, although I'm loath to mention that. But it's like a steampunk scorpion assassin, like a little robot.
Yeah,
fantastic. You know,
it's not steampunk though, is it? It's not all brass and cogs and clockwork. You look at it, and it looks more akin to something like the Ray Harryhausen sort of Sinbad type of creatures. Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's just got like a small like cog and a kind of capacitor in the back. You don't really see any moving parts, but yeah, the automaton scorpion.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
dating from 1801, and it's got some really crazy sort of letter with it, with some coded writing.
That's right. It's assassin letter. It's brilliant. I mean, the way it's done, the book is fantastic. It really is good. Like I say, the history's there, the details there. He's illustrated it well. Not just the photographs of the props, but the other illustrations he's put in there, I think, really sort of bring out the atmosphere of the stories that he's put in there. You know, it's some, as I say, they're amazing. It's just amazing to look at. It's one of these things that's very, very nice on the eye, but also there's a lot of information there too. Yeah.
So as I say, if you're obviously into everything that me and Freddie are into, then you're going to find this book right up your street. And again, it is called Dr. Cagliostro's Cabinet of Curiosities, Volume 3. And you can get it from Amazon. You can also get it directly from the publisher, which is Chronocopia Publishing. Obviously, shipping from Sweden is quite expensive. So if you're in the UK or America, then you can just get a copy direct from Lebanon Circle Magic. As I say, it's not on the site yet, so keep popping back to the site over the next few weeks. I'll put a newsletter out as well when it's available, and I'm pretty sure that those 10 copies that we got are going to fly off the shelf straight away.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, it's a brilliant book, and I mean, I'd say, Oscar's done a fantastic job here. Anybody's interested in it, I mean, I myself would recommend it to anyone 100%. It's brilliant, fantastic.
So, thanks a lot to Oskar and also to Chronocopia Publishing for sending us the complimentary copies through. Thank you very much. This is Dan Baines for the Mystic Menagerie podcast, and I'm here at the London Apothecary in the Old Victorian Operating Theatre, and I'm here with our guest for this show, and it's Oskar Hejll from Sweden. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me, Dan.
Hey, no problem. And at the beginning of the week, I had no idea who you were, but you contacted me to let me know you've just published a book called Dr. Cagliostro's Cabinet of Curiosities, Volume 3, and you've sent it through, and it looks amazing. And we're going to obviously we'll review it during this show, so our listeners can hear our thoughts on that. But do you just want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Well, the book is basically about my occult museum that is called Dr. Cagliostro's Cabinet of Curiosities, and it's a museum about everything that you don't get to see in ordinary museums. It's vampire hunters' equipment and mummified mermaids and all sorts of things that you really want to see but never get to see. And I was approached by a publishing company in Sweden that wanted to do a book about it. And we realized that the Swedish market for occult museum books was a bit too small, so we decided to do it in English. So that's why it's in English, and that's why it exists.
Brilliant. I mean, I've had a look through the PDF copy that you sent through, because I know your publisher has sent through some hard copies, which we'll have, and also I'll be selling via Lebanon Circle as well. So if any listeners want a copy, then they can either come to me, or we'll go through at the end of the interview where they can get hold of the book as well. But it's literally got everything in there that you could possibly think of, from, as you say, the Fiji mermaid in there, which is something close to my heart, and then from cryptids, the Yeti, the Necronomicon, which is always a good topic. So it's Lovecraftian literature a big influence with your work?
Oh yeah, of course it is, because my world is about the hidden world, the world that is around you but you don't see in everyday life. So my museum and also the book is about seeing the unseen in your normal world. So this is not this is not a created Harry Potter world. This is more about finding exciting stuff in your everyday life. The idea of this started when we were working in Istanbul a few years back, and we were walking from the bazaar back to the hotel, and the lights went out, and we were walking through the oldest parts of Istanbul, and it was, I mean, narrow alleys and wild cats and strange people, and well, we talked about what would make this any better. I thought, well, if there were vampires jumping on the rooftops, chasing us and observing us, that would make this more exciting. And so we started imagining that there were vampires, and thought, well, how do we bring this idea to the rest of the world? Because there are probably vampires up there. We don't know that there isn't any, so there could be. So my idea has been to bring stories and bring old facts to life, so that people can experience vampires in their ordinary lives.
Yeah, I mean the whole book, the way it's laid out, is like the journal like an explorer with the maps, and it's got a very At the Mountains of Madness feel to it. You know, with getting your exploration gear and going to these different far-flung regions of the globe and searching for, you know, creatures like the Yeti, and there's the Prague, the Golem of Prague, I believe, in there as well, which is something we were talking about in the show, the last show, about tulpas and, you know, all that kind of the mysticism of creating inanimate objects to become animate. And you know, I think there's something in this book that every bizarre performer could take away and see how creating a story around a prop, or, you know, is done properly. Because I think especially in bizarre magic and storytelling, it can be done, you know, pretty badly. You know, people get something like a shrunken head and make up some not entirely sort of believable story about it. But I think the way you've executed it in your book is, you know, wonderful. It's you know, I think to the uninitiated, they would sit down, read it, and take it away as a factual piece of work. Is that something that you sort of, is that how you sort of aimed for it to be?
Yeah, because well, of course, all the stories in the book is I put them together. I gather the facts so that the story will be my story, but it's always based on facts that I've gathered, and some stories have been more easy to tell than others. I mean, the historical background of shrunken heads, it's just to read a lot of books and you will find it, and I've gathered it. And but I think the way I have worked is from two different angles. Either start with an interesting object, like, for instance, a shrunken head. I mean, that's interesting in itself, and then tell the story about it. And then it's important to tell a good story and tell the right story, the right historical background, because then the head becomes interesting. And in other cases, you could tell a really good story about something very ordinary, like, well, that's what relics are. Yeah. I mean, it's a piece of bone, but due to the provenance of the bone, it becomes interesting.
Exactly.
So you can make an object interesting with the story, or you can bring the story from the object. So it's two different way of working, and I think people can read my book and find inspiration for working in both directions.
Definitely. I mean, you could take something as little as a chicken bone and put it in a small velvet box, and, you know, it becomes a an incorruptible relic of a saint's finger, for example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As long as you initially have to have that skill of storytelling and be able to weave the story around what is essentially a normal object.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's something that you do. It would appear with great ease, but obviously, you are a writer, storyteller, occult researcher, and it is like an amalgamation of everything you do in one piece, isn't it?
Yeah, the funny thing is that usually I find an interesting object of some sort, and then I want to display it, because I mean the book is about the exhibition. And when I travel around with the exhibition, if I have the object, I need to display it. So the object is just there, but then I have to spend like a week or two building a glass display case and another travel case for the glass display case, and all the electrics and all the wiring and all the lights. So the display cases are usually more work than finding the objects, because the objects just sort of appear.
I mean, let's talk about some of the props that in the book, or the artifacts, should I say? I mean, the work in there is amazing. Like the vampire hunting kit in there, the Edison's, the necrophone.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these props are absolutely amazing. I understand you come from a prop building background as well.
Yeah. Well, at least I have a love for objects and a love for animating objects, because I started off as a puppet maker and a puppeteer.
Yeah.
That's my real profession. So this idea with having objects to tell stories is what really is what's driving me and what I find interesting in this. So it started off as an idea of trying to make theater without actors, having objects telling stories. But now I'm back in the theater business when I start doing experiments with the necrophone and doing seances and stuff. So I guess my experiment failed, and I'm back into theater again.
So your the type of seances that you would do, are they more of a traditional style, where the actual what happens is due to the person's perception of what is happening there, or do you actually employ any form of magic, or I mean a lot of people do seances nowadays and everything's like remote control and things flying around, or do you do the traditional form where like the Victorian style, where you would basically create a dark room and let people's senses and imaginations run away with them?
No, I have pitched this as what's the word? Spiritistic demonstration.
Spiritualistic demonstration. Yeah.
So that's it. Where I sort of show how the tools that were used in seances and in the golden years of necromancy, and so I show tools and techniques that were used back in the day. So I don't claim to be a medium at all.
Yeah.
But and not even in the seance performance. The audience don't get any idea that I have any. I don't fake any psychic skills for me or such. It's about the objects.
Definitely, yeah.
So I demonstrate how the necrophone works, and
so the actual object works as well. It actually it is mechanical and does do something, or is it just a static prop?
No, it does things if I wanted to, and it's the same. I have a collection of spirit bells and all sorts of strange things, and of course some of it is like an obsidian mirror. I mean, it's a black piece of stone. You can't do much with it, but but you have all those very nice spirit bells with all sorts of mechanical secrets to them. But that's also part of seance history.
Yes. So you do like exhibitions and talks, and you actually present this stuff out on the road.
Yeah. That's what I've been doing with it for several years actually, and it's been a mix of both traveling around with my tent and showing the exhibition outside on different fairs and markets, and that's the fun part. Right now I have a big exhibition in Stockholm at the Hejll Museum, which is a big 19th century palace, and we're doing an exhibition there, and that's fun in one way, but it's also very fun to be out in marketplaces and in like a street performance where people don't really expect to see a mermaid. So that's where you really can twist their heads.
Yeah, it's a vanishing form of entertainment, I suppose. It kind of died in the 40s, I suppose, with after the Second World War.
Yeah.
The travelling freak show, or the carnival type attraction of seeing oddities.
Yeah.
Just kind of vanished, and if people see it nowadays, the reaction is always, I think in my experience, is always positive. Obviously you scare a few children along the way, and some people might go away a bit disturbed.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you do nowadays is it's still a rare thing, and it's great to see it done so well.
Yeah, and we sort of created the environment around us, because I hooked up with a few magicians and a fakir. So we have this like our own very small traveling sideshow circus called the Carnival, where my museum is part of it, but we also have the magic shows and the fakir and jugglers and stuff.
Yeah.
that creates, well, when we go to 19th century themed market, we could be in one small corner and be this really strange sideshow attraction thing. So then the museum is part of that, and that also works really well.
I think one of my earliest memories as a child, I went to what we call a steam fair in the UK, which is where they have all steam engines, and I remember going into a sideshow tent and seeing a two-headed baby in a pickling jar, and that's one of my earliest memories. And I think seeing something like that at such a young age definitely affected me to the point where it's what I do
obviously
now. As a full-time job, I am involved in that type of work, and it's great to make a living from doing something like that. From obviously what you do now, where do your past influences come from? Did you have a defining moment in your childhood that sparked the whole sort of occult interest and everything that you do now, or did you just read too many books as a teenager?
Well, a bit of both, I think. My father used to read books to me from when I was really, really small, and it was like the Ghost of Canterville and of course the Tolkien books and all of that. So and that sort of thing can easily get you hooked up with a bad crowd, and you start to do role playing and
become a geek.
Yeah,
I think we all come from.
Yeah. So my background is books and role-playing games, and I also worked a lot with museums, doing educational programs for children in schools, and recreating historical objects for lots of big museums in Sweden. And since I started working with Dr. Cagliostro project, I mean, everything I do sort of get mixed up. When I travel quite a lot in my work, so when I go to South Africa, I try to find out about their lore and their magic. And when we was a month working in Greenland now.
Wow, okay.
Of course, I had to do some research about is there any truth about the Cthulhu Tupilak story in Call of Cthulhu? So and if you dig deep enough, you always find the truth. That's why a lot of the stories about strange events in Mozambique and things like that, it's things that actually happened. So very, very little in the book and very little in my exhibition is actually fake. Sometimes I have to because when I have a good story and the evidence, the final evidence for the story is missing, then sometimes you have to add the evidence to make the story real and to make the story good.
It's like when you watch the documentaries on the Discovery Channel of, like, say, the hunt for the Loch Ness Monster, and they spend a whole hour saying, if we do this, you use this technology, and then at the end it's always like, we didn't find anything. And I mean, like, you kind of know that they don't find anything because it would have been in the news by then, but it always ends on a bit of an anticlimax, where I suppose when you're writing a book, you can actually add the climax.
Yeah, and if you work with entertainment, your final act can't be an anticlimax. So it needs to be good and it needs to be true. And if you're, I mean, I don't want to trick my readers into believing anything that's not true, so I only add the evidence if I have to.
Well, people will believe what they want to believe. Really. There's a lot of people out there that believe that the whole Cthulhu mythos is real. And, H.P. Lovecraft, when he was locked away in his grandfather's library all that time, discovered some dodgy books and actually found the secret to the elder gods and stuff. So, that is out there, but it's out there for interpretation. No one's ever said that it's true, but there's a hell of a lot of people out there who believe it is true. So
it is. Part of my work is to tell the other side of the story, because I mean it's so much people out there that says that there are no vampires, there are no ghosts, there are no werewolves, there's no God, there's no Santa Claus. So I've taken upon myself to tell the other side of the story. So if people want to believe in vampires, I could provide them with the facts, and if so. Because there are so many skeptics, so we don't need another skeptic, I think. So no matter what, I don't know if I believe in mermaids, but I could tell a story about a mermaid, and someone else can make up their mind whether it's for real or not.
Definitely. I mean, every tale about every sort of creature or every event, there's always a small percentage of those stories that begs the question, well, what did they see something that was actually real? I think obviously with the internet, the way it is nowadays with YouTube, anyone can create a UFO video or a mermaid sighting or whatever and just stick it straight on YouTube, and everyone will automatically say it's a hoax or it's a fake. I know more better than anyone about creating hoaxes and fakes. However, for saying that, I've also had some real paranormal experiences in my life that I can't explain, even though I come from a skeptical background. There's still things that have happened to me that I honestly can't put my finger on as to what it was. And on your travels and on your pursuit for all these weird and wonderful stories, have you ever experienced anything that makes you sort of stand back and think, was that something real or was it my own imagination?
Yeah, of course, but it's hard when you get back home and sit down comfortably in in the capital and think about what did those people really say about werewolves when we were up in northern Sweden in the middle of the night, and they say strange things, and they do strange things, and they show you strange things. It's, I mean, afterwards it's always hard to tell what you really experienced. So you have to like trust your instincts at the moment. So I usually write my stories when they happen. I mean, if I hear a ghost walking on the closed second story of the abandoned hotel where I live, I tell that story then. I don't stop to think about it and go back home and try to reason about it. But I tell it the way I experience it at the moment, and it's this same thing. I think it's about a lot of the stories is based on what I or what other people experience, what they feel, and you can't argue with that. If you feel the presence of a ghost, then well, you felt it.
You felt something.
So it's really no use to argue. Is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. You can always tell the story about the experience because the experience is true. And since I'm in storytelling, that's what's interesting.
Well, yeah, it's one of the most basic human desires is to tell stories.
Yeah,
and I think the skeptical community fail to understand that when they're too busy trying to scientifically disprove.
That
we all love a good story.
Yeah, I think it's part of a problem for this age. I think that no one believes in anything. I mean, if you don't believe in life after death, and you don't believe in, if it's not important what world you leave to your children, and if you don't believe in anything at all except your comfort at the moment, then I think we're in big trouble. So I think people need imagination. So that's also one of the main reasons that I work with the Dr. Cagliostro project, is to give people a tool to start working. Fire up their imagination. That's
like we read in the newspapers that they say that like Grimm's fairy tales nowadays are too dark for children of today.
Yeah,
they can go on the internet and look at everything from,
beheaded nuns
and people being beheaded and stuff, and we're too worried about protecting our children from age-old fairy tales. I think everyone's, as you say, we're heading for big trouble, and people have just got it the wrong way around. I mean, I don't know, from when we were children, only sort of 20, 30 years ago, my childhood now is definitely a lot different from my children's experience today. I was exposed to fairy tales and everything as it traditionally was, and now I look nowadays with the advent of mobile phones and the internet and science almost like destroying imagination. As I say, it's books like what you've created that can potentially reignite a child's imagination and put a bit of that back into the community. Yeah,
because I think imagination is important in many areas. I mean, everything from being an inventor. If you want to invent anything from medicine to a new car, you need to have imagination and think, what if? So if you have the skill to think, what if you start off with, what? I didn't know there were mermaids. Maybe there are. I don't know. If you can start that thought, then you can probably move on to being a successful engineer.
Well, that's it. I think one of the things that made me good at forensics was the fact I had an imagination.
Yeah.
Because without it, when you're working with only a few variables, if you have no imagination, you can't imagine what happened at the crime scene. So having, no matter how crazy your imagination might be, like mine, I did have some really far out ideas,
Yeah.
but when it boiled down to it, they were quite close to what actually happened at the time. So
yeah, and Isaac Newton, he wrote more books about magic than on science. And science is what we remember him for. So I think he had big help with imagination.
We remember him for the science, though, because that's the kind of thing that the majority of people want us to remember him for.
Yeah.
Whereas the magic side of things was probably brushed under the carpet a bit, saying, no, we'll forget about that bit, but we'll remember him for this. And I think that's sad that, because it's obviously that influenced his science and made him as successful as he was.
Yeah, if you have an open mind and the what if idea, if you can work with that and learn to use it as a tool, then you can be successful in any area, I think. And if you don't have that ability, then you're in deep trouble. And I think you need that skill in everyday life.
Definitely.
Just finding your way through the subway system, or inventing a cure for the common cold. It doesn't matter. You need imagination. Yeah. And I think imagination is not. I think I had problems in school trying to make my teachers understand that imagination is a good thing. And they didn't really
that issue at school. The daydreaming kind of aspect was my problem, because I used to get bored very easily, because I needed some form of outward, some other stimulation.
And I was really lousy in all the aspects of school, like history, arts, and everything. I was really lousy at that in school, but now it's my profession.
Exactly.
So
what could you want?
In your face school system. I said, but it is kind of a big problem, I think. But it's also it's hard being a teacher and taking care of all the children's strange needs and their. But I don't think you have to suppress. That's the right way to say it. Free mind and fantasy as hard as people do today.
So what have you got planned for the future? What's happening now the book's out, and are you working on something new? Are you working on volume 4, or what?
I am actually. I did this Greenland expedition last autumn. And I've started to write about that. I just hope my publishers come over their shock from our last project, and that we can make another book. And so that's it. And also I now started to doing this seance show and more lectures. Because writing a book is really, really hard work, especially if you're stupid enough to write it in a language that is not your own. So
I did think that. I was like reading it and thinking, geez, this guy's grasp of the English language is like better than mine, and I'm...
Yeah, that's all all the Lovecraft.
The Lovecraft,
So there's lots of Lovecraftian words in there. Omnibus. So I'm hoping I'm hoping that I could take it easy for a while and do more of the easy work, doing a few seances and doing lectures and making the next book in its own time, I hope. But as soon as I get inspired, it sort of kicks off, and then it's hard to stop. So I don't know.
When you went to Greenland, did you also go to Iceland as well, or was it just the Greenland expedition?
No, just we had a quick stop in Iceland, but we were in Greenland for a month. We're doing a big circus show there, and then headed out in the wilderness up in the north.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
it's one of my favourite. Well, Iceland is one of my favourite places on the planet. I love their kind of their folklore and the hidden people and that type of stuff, and how sort of still part of their culture and society it is. It's not brushed under the carpet. It's very sort of in your face, and everyone believes it. And I think that's an amazing thing. When you come back to sort of the UK and America and places like that, it's everything is all of our old pagan type traditions are essentially brushed under the carpet now, and looked away. Is it like that in Greenland as well? Do they still have a strong folklore tradition?
A bit of both, actually. The Christians in the 50s and 60s erased a lot of the old traditions. So a lot of the folklore and a lot of traditions disappeared. And so a lot of old symbols that no one really knows what they mean, and so now they are trying to recreate or restore a lot of what was lost, and bring back traditions. And there's a strong nationalistic movement now in Greenland, since they got a sort of independence recently. But I mean, if I travel to the north of Sweden, the traditions there amongst the Sami people or amongst the Swedish settlers is there. It's unbroken. It's a living tradition, more than it is on Greenland, even if they have a lot of their old stuff is still alive, but not like in Iceland. But I mean, Greenland it's a magical place. It's so vast. I mean, you can't imagine it. It's so big. So a lot of hidden secrets that needs to be discovered still there.
Yeah, I've always found it odd that Greenland is icy and Iceland is green. Pretty much, it's like they've got it the wrong way around.
But Greenland is quite green. It's just that they don't have any trees anywhere, but quite green. Yeah. Not right now. But
well, I look forward to definitely reading about that in the future. It's something that's close to my heart in terms of like interests and everything. And if you can just tell our listeners where they can get hold of your current book.
Yeah, of course, they can order it from you, from Lebanon Circle, but it's also on Amazon UK and Amazon.com if you live overseas, and in Sweden it's in all online, all major online bookstores, and a few of the bookstores where you normally go to buy your Lovecraft literature.
And it's published through Chronocopia, is that correct?
Yes, Chronocopia Publishing.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your investigations in old London to meet up today and have an interview with us, and I'm sure our listeners will be really interested, and hopefully they'll go and pick up a copy of your book.
I hope so too.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Oskar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
House of Dark Shadows, rated GP.
I suppose this comes under sort of our true life sort of experiences and the true life sort of paranormal kind of things, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, it would fit in the paranormal corner pretty much, because it does involve paranormal experiences.
Definitely. And I've got some weird stories to tell about this. It's a hobby that a lot of people have got involved in, which is urban exploration.
Yes.
Which is where you find an old abandoned building and you get inside it and you have a good look around, And I think you see it in a lot of films as well. I think at the start of the American Horror Story Asylum, they broke into the asylum and looked around and stuff like that. There is a real thrill you get out of this. It's a real exciting feeling.
It is. It's the feeling of knowing you shouldn't be there, and also wondering what else is actually in there at the same time as you.
And what's happened there in the past as well.
Definitely, because you never pick places
I think anywhere that's derelict and sort of falling apart and is boarded up, you shouldn't really be going in there. Naturally becomes a creepy place anyway. And because of that, especially if it's been standing for a long time, legends tend to build around, buildings like that.
Definitely. It's that horror film experience, the old abandoned castle on a hill. And sadly, these buildings are becoming more fewer these days because they're being knocked down. They're putting Starbucks or whatever on top of them instead. Yeah. So, but I remember years ago, when I was young, in the 70s, early 80s, there were a lot of these strange buildings still standing. And I was always fascinated by them. And I remember, even when I used to go and visit my grandparents over in London, there were some buildings there. There were old asylums and things like this. You see them, and they'd say, that used to be, whatever, nut house or whatever they call it. Those days. And just looking at the building on the hill there, you think, you'd get a shiver down your spine, wouldn't you? Yeah, just seeing it and thinking what was there. And you'd assume that it would be haunted because so much suffering would have happened in that place that it leaves some residue or something there, But how I first got into it was very strange because when I was at secondary school, there was a thing where you had to sort of, you did your exams, you had your sort of English, maths and things you were doing. There was another class you were supposed to take just to fill the time you wouldn't take an exam for. So there'd be something like metalwork, cookery, these sort of things, And you had to fill in a form to say which one you wanted to go on. And I didn't complete mine. I just threw it in the bin, and so did a few mates of mine. So we weren't on anyone's register. Okay. So basically, we had a few hours to kill before we went home, and no one at school noticed. But there was an abandoned girls' school near the school where I was. It's been abandoned for about 10 years. So we decided to knock around in there. And we managed to get in through the window, but in there was the stage was there, the chairs were there. It's like a very creepy building because it's a building that used to have activity and was so silent. It had that weird atmosphere to it. You look around, you find really old school books from 1940s and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the pages scattered over the floor. You always get that, don't you? Pages everywhere. And
exactly, yeah, and just things and people writing on the walls and stuff like that. And you think that there used to be activity in this place, and it was like there was one bit, is an outside bit, which used to be the cookery class, and there's always battered cookers there. They're all rusty and stuff like that. And at one point people were there, they were cooking stuff. There was a teacher there. It was bright. It was new. Yeah. And it's just a bleak sort of like a shell of a building. And even though this is in the daytime, we used to go there, it was still creepy. And that's where I think the addiction to get into these places started. And we'd always get like a little souvenir from there, just even if it's like a light switch or something like this, or or a key from the piano, just something that we'd taken from this place. Yeah. And that's where it started really with me. Where did the first time you had an urban exploration experience then?
Well, I think we used to have one. It wasn't really a building as such, but we used to have a train line at the bottom, sort of in the bottom of the valley. And there used to be quite a few suicides down there, and everyone used to go on about this thing called the Black Scarecrow. But he used to live in this old train tunnel. So, and it was kind of bricked up at the front, but you could get in through a small doorway, you get the iron doors that have been kind of broken down.
Yeah.
So we all used to go down at night and look for this thing called the Black Scarecrow. And obviously it was a two-way sort of scare, because you've got the chance of possibly bumping into the ghost of someone who's just been hit by an Intercity 125, or you've got the chances of bumping into the Black Scarecrow down there. And I always remember, you'd get so hyped up as a kid when you go and do things like that 9 times out of 10 someone did see the Black Scarecrow, or it's got a technical term for it. It's actually, well, not a technical term, but it's actually called legend tripping.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's actually it's a term used by folklorists and anthropologists to describe a practice which is essentially children or teenagers going to places where they shouldn't be, i.e. somewhere that's got a ghost story attached to it, or you going into the old girls' school and getting so hyped up about going and breaking into one of these places and exploring it that it actually becomes a real strange, almost like rite of passage, because it gives you the opportunity to show how brave you are, but not really put yourself in a huge amount of danger, because obviously the danger is a result of the hype of actually doing something like that.
Definitely. And there's also stories you want to be, it's almost like once you've done it, and other people haven't, you've got something to talk about. You're known as the bloke who's been in there,
Yeah.
Because I remember near where I live, there's a place called Burnham Beeches, which is a very ancient woodland, and it's preserved by the Council of London, the great London Council and all that, and it's very, very old, And if you go there at night and you switch your car lights off, it's pitch blackness, And there's all sorts of urban myths about it, one of them was the story. I don't know if you heard, but there's a man and a woman driving I was told as a kid that this happened in Burnham Beaches, but obviously it's not a real story, I don't think. But the car broke down. The bloke said, I'm going to go and get some petrol. And the woman's sitting there for about an hour. He doesn't come back. Next minute, there's a banging on the roof of the car. And then the police are there, and there's a lunatic holding the husband's head. Yes. And they arrest him and take him off. And that was always attributed to Burnham Beaches when we were kids. So it's a place with a bit of awe to it. One of the rumours about it was about witchcraft there, about this witchcraft covens meeting there.
Okay.
Which they did. And there was this kid at school. He went down there on his bike because he lived near there at night, and there was people in robes dancing around fire, and they had animal heads on sticks, and they were chanting. Right? Yeah. So, he was literally pale, and we thought there's no way that he could be lying about it because he was so terrified by it. So the next day we was going to go down there and have a look to the spot where it was. He wouldn't go with us because he was so scared. I don't think he's ever been there again.
No.
So we got on our chopper bikes, this being the 70s, and rode down there. It's not a place you can access easily. It's a bit of a trek to get there.
Yeah.
And there was burnt charred ground, and there was these sticks with like rabbit skulls on them. So he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But what's really weird about this is in the 60s there was a witchcraft coven called the Clan of Tubal Cain. They were quite well known around the time. And Robert Cochrane was the person who was the leader of this coven.
Yeah.
And they were quite known for meeting at Burnham Beaches, and his wife was part of it. But I think what happened, his wife broke away and formed her own coven, and they got divorced, and he went a bit sort of crazy really with it all. And on Midsummer's Eve in 1966, allegedly he drank a chalice of poison wine.
Yeah.
And collapsed. And he was taken away. There's a nearby hospital right near the beaches in the middle of nowhere. It's the Canadian Red Cross Hospital. And he was taken there, and he died in this hospital. So that's a big story about this witch. And it's by a tree that's known as Druid's Oak.
Yeah.
But this hospital in the sort of like 80s, 90s was still standing, but derelict.
Right. Okay.
So of course the big thing was get inside that hospital. Now they had security there and a bloke with a dog.
Yeah.
And it was a real challenge to get inside it.
And did you get in?
Yeah, me and my mate used to go on these walks at night because there's a lot of woodland around and weird sort of countryside, I suppose. We go on things called psychic walks. We walk out in the darkness and see what happened.
Yeah.
And we walked and we came to it, and we said, that's the Canadian Red Cross Hospital. So they said all this time about security, and we climbed over the fence and managed to get inside it.
Mm.
Now, there's really creepy stories about this. One about witches getting inside the hospital as a tribute to Robert Cochrane.
Okay.
And when we got inside there's all pentagrams drawn on the walls. There was like things that have been burnt on the floor. People have been doing rituals there.
Yeah.
There was like corn dollies that people have burnt and things like this. At the back, there's like a bit of a field at the back, and then a building at the back of it. We went inside this building, and it felt so creepy, really, really creepy. And we found out later on that was the actual mortuary.
Oh, right, okay.
Because this bloke, I know, his dad used to work there as a porter, and he reckoned, one of the stories that he reckoned happened was that he was carrying a body from the hospital to the mortuary, and it's quite a trek to carry a dead body. It'd take you a good sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. I think it's a long time when you're carrying a corpse. And apparently it was in a stretcher, and this corpse had air in its lungs, and it sat up, looked at them, and puked blood all over them. And that's apparently what his dad told us. So, and that's why this is so creepy. We went there, and it was a really intense experience. But of course, having that addiction, we wanted to go back in there. And this is before you had camera phones and stuff like that, so we couldn't really take pictures. But when the cameras wouldn't come out, there was no light there unless you took all your equipment with you, if you're a professional photographer. But we'd get in there time again. But then the bloke who with the dog sussed it out, so it ended up like a Benny Hill chase around this creepy old building in the dark with a man with an Alsatian and a torch.
Jeez.
Which again was quite exhilarating. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that became quite an addiction. There's actually a website which has pictures of that building. It's gone now. They've knocked it over and they built houses on top of it.
Right.
But there's a website called Abandoned Britain, abandonedbritain.co.uk, and if you look up the Canadian Red Cross Hospital on Taplow, there's photographs of it, and there's also photographs of the actual pentagrams on the wall that we saw.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, those places just hold so much intrigue for kids, don't they? It's. I remember when I was probably about, 11 or 12, there used to be a local children's home called Fairlawns Children's Home, and we used to walk past it every day, when we used to go to school and on the way back, and it was a children's home for. It wasn't a borstal as such, but it was for troubled children. As my mum would say, it's where naughty kids go. So you would walk past there at night, and you'd hear kids screaming and like having fights with social workers, and they'd almost like run to the fence like you see in zombie films, and they'd be hanging onto the. You used to get that like wire netting that you'd get in playgrounds, and they'd be hanging off the nets and trying to climb over, and it was quite a scary place to walk past.
Wow.
And it actually closed down when I'd sort of left that school. It was probably about 2 years after about 2 years since I'd ever been back there. And my mate was like, yeah, Fairlawns has closed down. It's all boarded up, but do you want to go in and have a look around? And it was an old Victorian-style mansion. And we went round the back. And do you know when they put like the big metal aluminium sheets over all the windows and doors, so you just can't get in? They're almost, I think, as a anti-arson measure, aren't they, to stop you throwing things through windows and smashing windows. And we went round, and one of these metal plates was slightly... because it was such a big window and it was aluminium, you could just bend it and it would bow enough just to slip through into one of these windows. We managed to open the window and get inside. And again, it was like the girls' school that you went into. It was... Inside was completely like derelict and gutted, and there was bits of books everywhere. And I think one of the creepy things is though the kids had actually started like graffitiing on the walls in there, and I think they'd graffitied on the walls when it was actually an operating school, and it was all like creepy stuff, like like things like "I'm in pain" and and loads of really inappropriate drawings and stuff, but sprayed in spray cans, and it looked like stuff that was actually there when it was actually part of the school. It didn't look like it was there afterwards. It's almost like the stuff that you can imagine the kids who were there, that's the sort of thing that they write and do on the walls. And we had a good sort of ferret around in there. We couldn't get in the basement was locked, and no matter what we did, there was no physical way we could get into the basement. So we didn't get in there, but when we did get onto the top floor, we got into like the old the attic spaces when you have the little window that looks out.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, we got up there and we saw a police car outside, so we was like, shit. So we managed to wait up there till the police kind of had a bit of a snoop around and decided that we weren't in there anymore. We managed to sort of escape and get away. But it was definitely the thrill of being in like this creepy old children's home. It was a proper Victorian place as well. It had like the sweeping staircase. I mean, at one point it would have been a really opulent mansion, I would have thought, but it was like St. Trinian's that had been in a zombie film. That's the only way I can describe it.
I think part of the faded glamour is attractive. When you see like a rundown hotel and you think this was like in the 20s, people were ballroom dancing here. This was now it's a shell of a building with like full paintwork and the signs missing. There's that faded glamour thing that has kind of an appeal too as well. Yeah.
I mean, there is a hotel like that in Gibraltar. So obviously from my Navy days, I wasn't your typical sailor, so I didn't used to go out and get absolutely leathered every time we went into a port. I'd actually go out and go exploring. And when you go to Gibraltar, if you go on the other side of the rock, there is actually a hotel that obviously didn't do very well because it wasn't in the best area. And it was just left to rot, basically. So there's this big hotel on the other side, on this beach, and it is like, you can have a walk around inside. And, there's the swimming pool that's been drained and the bar. And it has got that creepy kind of... it was once the place to go, and someone had invested a lot of money and time into this labour of love, I suppose, and now it's just decaying on some beach somewhere.
And it's the fact that it's disappearing, like old fairgrounds, they're creepy as well. Do you know what I mean? You see old fairgrounds that are run down and stuff like that. Mm. They're very creepy. I mean, when I was younger, my main thing I had, the big thing I would do was to get in and look around an old lunatic asylum. That was the thing. Okay. And I'll tell you how it started. When I was young, I visited a relative in hospital, and it was a place called St Bernard's Hospital in Ealing. Yeah. And what I was told, when you're a kid, some of your adults tell you, it used to be a nut house, because half of it was like a modern hospital, and the other half was still an asylum for people that were, mentally ill. Yeah. But it had been around in Victorian times. It was like a proper asylum. There would be very dangerous people in there, and of course, your imagination as a kid ignited. You're thinking, And I was told, don't go near that section. There's some crazy people there, but it was actually almost adjacent to the normal hospital, for want of a better word, Anyway, I went outside, and as I was in there, because it's quite intense, the kid being in a hospital visiting someone that's sick, and this woman started talking to me who was from that ward, and she was saying, there's a basement down there, and that's where they lock up all the people that are too scary to go out, like freaks. There's like people with 2 heads in there, and people with 6 arms. There's a man that's just a head with a foot on it. Similar stuff like that. And obviously, she was one of the patients, right? Yeah. She was obviously bonkers. But the way she was dressed was quite smart, and I thought she was a nurse of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, and they said, they're locked down there, so they can't even let people out in daylight because they're like monsters. They scare people. You know, and being a kid into the sort of stuff I was into, I thought, I want to go and have a look down there. You know.
Yeah.
So someone came and took this woman away. Obviously a nurse, you know, but I didn't realise I was talking to probably one of the patients who was maybe schizophrenic or something. But being a kid that I was, I thought, all right, I'm going to take a chance here because there was like a corridor and no one was really there. And I thought, I'm going to take a run down there, go down the stairs. I want to have a look at some of these things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was my intention. So I just, as a kid, just pelted it down this corridor, ran down these stairs, almost fell over. Ran, but then I got to this like locked door, and somebody's like a nurse sitting at a table, you know. And obviously this is maybe one of the highest security wards or something like this. But I thought I'd reach the door where all these freaks were. You know, I thought it was going to be like, you know, have you ever seen Basket Case 2?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like the things in that. You know? And the woman said, "You can't go in there. You can't go in there. You know, go back upstairs." And someone come and escort me upstairs.
Yeah.
But thinking about it now, it probably was. Just people that were ill, just people that were troubled. But in my mind, I felt I was so close to seeing these freaks, you know, these people with 6 arms and stuff like this. But I became an obsession after that. And the one I did get into is a well-known one near Croydon called Hejll Asylum. I don't know if you know that. It's
no, I've not heard
hospital.
That one. Yeah.
It's quite well known because the reason why, it's been there since the Victorian times, and there's been some quite well-known people there. Michael Caine's mother was there, Charlie Chaplin's mother, and David Bowie's brother, who's schizophrenic, was there.
Okay.
And on the cover of the David Bowie album, Man Who Sold the World, that album from 1970, he wrote a song on there about his brother called All the Madmen. It's about people with mental illness. And there's like 3 different covers for the album, but one's like a cartoon. And on the front of it, it's like a clock tower. And it's a painting of Hejll Asylum itself. There's a very distinctive Victorian clock tower there.
Right.
And I remember it from this album cover, you know, being a fan of Bowie, like, you know. And it's something I always wanted to go to. And at the bottom, there's like a train station there, and a lot of the people to escape run down there and put their heads on the train track, and the train would go over them.
Jeez, okay.
And Bowie's brother was one of the ones who did that.
God.
So it closed down. I think most of it's demolished now. There's certain parts of it remaining, but we managed to get in there in the early 90s when it just closed down.
Yeah.
And it's the most horrible feeling, intense feeling. You go inside there and you know it's Victoria, and there's all these rooms just left abandoned there. There was like patient notes and there's bits of paper everywhere. There was rooms which are the electric shock rooms.
Jeez.
And we had torches in there. There's about 3 of us went in there, and it was like in a real bad state because it's a Victorian building, but I don't think it had been maintained very well. So although it hadn't been abandoned for long, it still had that feeling of dereliction, you know.
Yeah.
But there was
all
like
those
a board,
white tiles and the white tiles everywhere.
Definitely, and it's really horrible smell, you know, as well. And there's always stories about being haunted by these crazy ghosts that are trying to attack you. But the funny thing is, I suppose it's funny in an ironic way, there are obviously local kids have been in there and done stuff.
Yeah.
And there was one bit was the canteen. And on the wall, there's on these sort of boards, you know, these sort of like whiteboards where you write things in pen.
Yeah.
And someone had written on there, today's menu, dead mad people. Had written on there. And that was on there for a while. But we managed to get in. There's a water tower there. And there's a big graveyard at the back. There's a big grassy bit, which is where they must have buried people that had no family and whatnot. But the feeling in there was so intense, and it did feel like someone was watching you. It did feel like something bad could happen at any minute. But the memento I got from there, one of the rooms, it was a padded cell there, but the key was still in the door.
Yeah.
And it's a really rusty old key, so I took that key, kept it as a memento, and that's in my macabre museum.
Excellent.
But the other year, apparently, because I was going to go there again, actually, but there was a fire there. Some local kids must have got inside, set fire, but the clock tower, it fell apart, you know, and the big clock fell off and smashed, and all the locals were watching it, and they're quite sad it's gone, but it makes you wonder if a property development has had something to do with it, you know, because there's a lot of ground there.
Yeah, there's like a bit of sort of someone paid someone to go and burn it down on purpose so they could like flatten it and build, as you say, Starbucks on it or something.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if you Google, I mean, anyone Googles out, look at abandonedbritain.com as well, .co.uk as well. It's on there. There's pictures of it on there, and they've taken pictures of every single aspect of it before it was knocked down, and they took them in daylight as well. So despite it being in daylight, it's very creepy. And there's also a video on YouTube of some kids, and a ghost appears in the background. It says Hejll Asylum Ghost. If you type that into YouTube, and this like figure zooms past them in the background like a ghost. So
wicked.
It was a really evil. I mean, it made you feel like you were choking or suffocating.
Yeah.
You just felt like you had to leave that place, you know. I mean, partially maybe because I knew about it beforehand and what went on there, but it wasn't a very pleasant feeling.
I think if I'd have gone back in hindsight, if I'd have going back to these places that I'd been exploring and stuff as kids, I'd have really kept some of the things, like, you said you came away with the key that you used and you use it in your museum now, like all these like patient notes and just headed notepaper and things like that. I'd have just scooped up bundles and bundles and bundles of it, having known, then what I was going to do today.
Exactly.
I'd have bags of the stuff.
I wish I'd have taken a lot of stuff now, yeah. Thinking about it, I think the stuff I saw, even having the electric shock treatment machine, that'd be nice.
I think as a kid, though, you kind of think, by taking something away, though, am I essentially, you've got that strange fear of the paranormal. Am I taking away, if I take something away with me, will something follow me home? There's always that kind of fear. As you grow older, you think, well, that's a load of rubbish, that ain't going to happen. However, as a kid, you do have that kind of fear, and as a result, you don't come away with anything.
No, you think, am I disrupting the spirits?
Yeah.
But I've got that key. But I mean, it's a nice memento. But there's better stuff I could have taken.
I think one of the best ones I ever did, and it's a proper like Indiana Jones one. This was when we was. This is back in 1992 when I was in Bosnia. About every sort of 4 to 6 weeks, we always used to go and have a break somewhere. And it was always somewhere like Corfu or Sicily. And on this one occasion, the captain anchored off this island called Isolo Favignana, it's in the Messina Straits. So it's between Sicily and the bottom of the boot of Italy. So there's like a small channel down there, and there's this little island called Isolo Favignana. It's just a rock basically. And on this rock, there was like a fort at the top, and it was like a Moorish fort from the Crusades. So it'd been there, obviously, a fair few years. And there's this like Moorish fort up there, and it looks almost inaccessible to get to. So again, you had your contingent of lads who'd be like, right, we're all going to the bar. And about me and 4 other lads, we actually looked at this fort, and we thought, that looks like a bit of a challenge. Let's have a climb up to it. And people just thought we're nuts. They said, there's not a chance in hell you're going to get up that. So bearing in mind that we didn't have any, mountain climbing equipment or anything, we just got we got our combat boots on and some shorts. And it took us about an hour and a half to climb up this rock face. It was almost like sheer rock face in places. If we'd have fallen, we'd have died basically. But we were so, but because people said, you'd never get up there, we thought, bollocks, we're going to give it a go. So we got up there. There was loads of barbed wire there as well. So we had to sort of navigate our way through all this barbed wire. And it was baking hot as well. It was probably about 40 degrees. And we eventually got to the top of this old Moorish fort. And it was, as you can imagine, it was like just a tower. And inside there was lots of little rooms and spiral staircases and stuff. And we was expecting to go in there and for it to be completely empty. Obviously, from it being there from sort of around the Crusades, you don't expect anything to be in there.
No.
But when we got in there, we actually found all this Nazi radio equipment. And what it was, It was an actual spy station used by the Germans to watch boats going through the Messina Straits between Italy and Sicily. And there was the huge radio equipment, with the big dials on there, headphones that had just been left lying on the desk as if someone had just taken them off and put them down. And there was probably about 20 filing cabinets full of documents and stuff. Some of them had been thrown about, but there was all these German World War II Nazi documents in there. The radio equipment. There was also one of the big parabola mirrors for doing Morse code with people, obviously with the other ships and people on maybe across the straits.
Wow!
I've actually got some photographs somewhere. I'll try and dig them out if I can, and I'll put them on the Facebook page.
Definitely, yeah, fantastic.
I actually came away with some stuff from there, but I didn't come away with anything cool. Having in hindsight, having gone back, I'd have ransacked the place. But I actually came back with some cups and saucers, German cups and saucers, which I thought were pretty cool. I bought them back for my mum. I think my mum used them. They didn't have swastikas on or anything, but they were German. And there was also one of those table football things up there as well, with the obviously with all the players, and you twiddle the handles and the footballer kicks the ball about.
Yeah.
So, but half the footballers were missing. So there's a picture of us all up there having a game of this table football in this German radio station, and it was crazy because I don't think many people. We were probably maybe the third or fourth people who'd been up there since the end of World War II.
Wow!
And it wasn't creepy though because it was so hot and it was daylight and it was hot, but I think it was just the shock and the wonder of walking straight into something that looked like literally like a set out of one of the Indiana Jones films.
Yeah, it's like going back in time, isn't it? It's been untouched, and you've gone back into a time that's just been left there.
Yeah,
it's those things. Because like, the weirdest thing is near me. There's a pub. It's in Slough High Street, and it's called the Kingfisher. And what it was like near the shopping centre. It's like a big thing that came out of the ground, like a big, almost like a tube shape.
Okay.
And you'd go inside this door, and it's steps that would go underground. This pub was completely underground, so it's basically a fire hazard.
Yeah,
there's only one door in and one way out. And these very steep steps that went down underground to this pub. And in the sort of 80s, 70s, it was a very busy pub, but you got a lot of, I suppose, wrong-uns there.
Yeah.
You got a lot of bikers, drug dealers, that kind of thing. They had bands on there. So it's quite the place to hang out. It was considered to be sort of like quite a tough, rough place, And apparently when it closed down, it was left, the night it closed, it was just left, And they concreted in the steps.
Right.
So now it's just smoothed over. If you walk there, no one would know that there used to be a pub there underground,
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and the bit on top, they just took that away, So, but apparently it's still there. The shell of the pub is still there, and it's pretty much left as it was.
Okay.
And apparently the sort of people from the police or the ambulance service have to go every month to do a safety check down there.
Right.
And they reckon there's about sort of 2 foot, a foot and a half, 2 foot of water there, and rats running around.
Yeah.
But it's all pretty much intact. And some bloke on one of these forums I looked at, on these Facebook things, some bloke went down there and took photographs by an infrared camera.
Yeah.
And this pub's still there, but he's saying that if anybody wanted to, you can get there from the shopping centre. If you got in there yourself, if you fell over and hurt yourself, you would be found for a month until because there's no phone signals down there. You know what I mean? It's about 20 foot of the ground.
Yeah.
But it's still there, the shell of it, and it's fascinating. I'd like to go down there, but it's obviously having someone with you.
That's it. I mean, that reminds me of that old, I don't know if it was a Hammer film or not, but it was called Raw Meat. And it was to do with the Irish, when they were building the London Underground, they had Irish workers obviously down there, and a bit of the tunnel caved in.
And it comes to the end of another Mystic Menagerie podcast.
It would have cost, as the story goes, it would have cost more to dig them out than it would have been to pay the actual, pay the actual guys down there. So they just basically left them there, thinking that they'd died.
So
keep
your world as weird as you can.
Breeding down there, almost like because there's women as well, women workers as well as men, and they become like an inbred subterranean
hopefully
race.
This time next year we'll be into double figures,
inbreds really, and they feed on people who are left on the underground at night waiting for like the last tube home and stuff. It's got Donald Pleasance in it, I think. I think he's the actual investigating police officer. And
that's right.
Yeah, and they come out of the tunnels, and one of the guys, the only thing he can say is mind the gap," because that's the only thing he's ever heard. And Donald Pleasance actually finds this section of tunnel that was caved in, hundreds of years ago, and there's all these bunk beds in there, and there's all these deformed people living in there, eating humans. It's pretty horrific. I watched it and quite enjoyed it. My wife thought it was crap, but it had that nostalgic sort of just the story itself is good enough, even though I don't think it was executed particularly well. The story that you go into these as you say, underground or derelict or unexplored places, the mind, especially if you've got a good imagination, you don't know what you're going to bump into. There could be something that's been living in there for even if it's a homeless person who's taken up residence in there, you're going to be equally as scared bumping into, a tramp wielding a machete as you are, I don't know, a zombie or a demon leaping out at you.
It's funny you should say that, actually, because there's these, where I lived in as a child, like a village, there was these the small houses. They were almost like bungalows, but they had an upstairs. But the upstairs was small, almost like a loft. So imagine like a house. They were weird-looking houses, and they were painted in bright colours. So imagine there's like a normal living room out downstairs, and upstairs a smaller upstairs, but like a loft almost with rooms, And they've knocked them down now, and there's shops on top of them. But I think old people lived there. But in this is in the early 80s. I think all the old people had died, and they were about to be demolished, And the house that stood out, there was a blue house, painted very bright blue,
Yeah.
you know, and it's really, it looked almost like East European looking. You know, some of the houses you get in Prague and places like that,
Yes.
where the design, almost like a toy house, you know.
Okay.
And of course, being kids, and of course, I think it's late 70s or 80s, being fascinated by, we just call it the Smurf house because it was bright blue. So the big thing was to go and hang about in the Smurf house, but we didn't see it scary or anything like that. We'd go in there, we'd eat sweets and muck around as kids do. It felt like our own little. It's like a kids having a Wendy house or a tree house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where an adult can disturb you, and it was fine there. You know, we weren't scared by it. But once we didn't really go to the upstairs bit. But a mate of mine walked upstairs and said, "There's a bloke up there," like, you know. So we walked up the stairs, and they're really sort of strange stairs. You know, them stairs that lead to a loft, them sort of wooden stairs.
Yes.
It was those kind of stairs. So we went up there, and there was like we saw this leg lying there, this bloke lying there.
Right.
And we thought, if he wakes up, he might be some nutcase. Do you know what I mean? He might live here. So we ran out, you know. And a few years later, it was found that a tramp had been living in there, and he'd died, and his body was discovered like 2 weeks after he'd died. So basically, we'd seen a corpse and not realised it.
Jeez, okay.
So we were scared of the Smurf house after that, you know what I mean? After hearing that it was a dead body in there.
The dead tramp in the Smurf house.
Exactly, because what happened is in the newspaper, the local paper, because being kids, you don't read the local paper, and the story was generally saying that he was drunk and he died, whatever, you know. But obviously, being kids, there's a monster in the house which killed him.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we go back and other kids say, "Oh, there's a mad axe man who lives in there and he's going to get you," there's all different stories as to what killed this tramp, you know, rather than the actual real one. So the Smurf house was something we'd run past pretty quickly rather than sitting there and read comics and eat sweets.
Yeah.
So we didn't expect that. You know?
I think there's a lot of mileage in a book of, you know, collecting stories from all over the world, from essentially these legend tripping sort of stories of kids who've gone into these buildings and what they expected to be there or what they found when they were in there, and, you know, if they took anything away with them. They're just great sort of ghost stories, and the stories that you pass down to your own, you know, kids as well. I know that I've already told my eldest son about the Nazi sort of spy station in you know, on that island, and, you know, he was amazed by it, and I just wish I could have gone back and taken more of it away with me, instead of, you know, being too involved with the table football up there, and actually sort of looking at some of the equipment and taking some of the headed papers away and stuff. It's just, I kick myself now, because now that's what my job is. It's reproducing these types of documents and, you know, looking at that type of stuff. And I think if I was to go, you know, if me and you were going to sort of team up and go and break into one of these places and have a look, I'd probably have to take like a few bin bags with me, because I was going to come out with a hell of a lot of stuff.
Transit van.
Because you feel bad about, you'd probably get done for theft. However, when they bring the bulldozers in and knock those places down to build, as you say, Starbucks, all of that stuff dies with it. No one takes any of that away. They don't tend to send a historical team in to collect all of this electric shock therapy treatment and patient's notes. They just bulldoze it and it's gone forever. So, you know, essentially by breaking into these places and looking for stuff like that, you're almost preserving a bit of history.
Oh, definitely. And the thing is I wish I'd have gone, like Cagliostro, I wish I'd got some straitjackets from there and ECT machines. And also on a similar note, I talk kind of like stuff that's been thrown out or stuff that's, you know, lost for generations, is in Slough, where I grew up. That's where Jerry Anderson filmed his programs, you know, like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and all that.
Yeah.
He's on a Slough trading estate, and basically what it was like an office type building. Half of it was like the sort of the sort of clerical side where they'd type the scripts up and do that kind of thing, and the other half was a studio where they'd film all this stuff. And in the 60s, my mum worked there for a while. What she'd do is she'd type up the scripts for the actors to read out. And obviously met Jerry Anderson and that, you know. But when it closed down, they obviously he took some of his favourite sort of models, you know, like Lady Penelope and Parker and stuff like this.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were just dumped in skips.
Jeez, okay.
Do you know what I mean? And if I'd have gone in and skipped and salvaged, you know, the original Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and Stingray models, they'd be worth a fortune.
Yeah, you'd have gold teeth by now. You could have have gold teeth and like be like driving around in like a really big like pink car or something, like Lady Penelope's car. But
definitely, I'd have a Lady Penelope car, gold teeth, gold toenails. You know what I mean? And drinking the fire.
You'd be rolling in it, literally.
Definitely, and I wish I'd have gone there and got them. You know, I wish I'd have gone and got them, because everyone knew about it, but we thought that at the time, you know, that stealing, you can't go there, you can't take them. You know what I mean? As kids, it's, you know, and a kid at school did see the puppets in there, like, you know, and the models as well, some of the ships and stuff like that. But I know a friend of mine, he owns all the original outfits from Space 1999. You know, the jumpsuits they have.
Yeah.
And they had an auction where they auctioned off all the some props from films and TV, and he bought all the original Space 1990 jumpsuits. And his band, they perform TV themes. They're called Adventures of Parsley, and he plays Hammond organ. They do like retro TV themes. They all wear the Space 99 outfits, the original ones on stage. So you have to take real care of them because if they fall apart, you can't replace them. They're the originals, but they're a great band, Adventures of Parsley, by the way.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out.
Very good.
Cool. So that was it was the paranormal corner, but it tied in a bit of urban exploration as well. So obviously you've got your paranormal aspects of that. But also, if you've got any experiences yourself, or even any sort of photographs, if you've been in any of these creepy, type asylums or old hospitals yourself, we'd be interested in having a look, and you can post them on our Facebook page, which is the Mystic Menagerie Facebook page. And also, just if you've got any stories you want to share with us, just send them through, and me and Freddie will be glad to read them out for you.
Definitely, we'd love to, yeah, because I think most interesting people had a story like this in their life, particularly in their teenage years or early 20s, because it's something you can't resist, it's something you really can't resist doing.
It's a part of growing up.
Definitely. Makes life much richer.
That's it.
Scream and scream again. There is no scream more soul-piercing than one the ear cannot hear. Scream and Scream Again, starring Vincent Price.
She's a composite, like Keith, for the so-called vampire killer.
Right, welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie podcast. Now, over Christmas, there was some pretty terrible TV on, so me and my darling wife decided to dig out a box set and, over a few evenings and get involved with something. And one of the shows that I've always been interested in was True Detective. And one thing that attracted me to True Detective was the fact I'd heard, some slight Lovecraftian undercurrents in there. And that's the one thing that drew me to it. Had no one had mentioned anything about there being anything slightly Lovecraftian about it, I wouldn't probably have touched it with a barge pole, to be honest, because, it just sounds like a normal American cop show. And I think when I recommended it to Freddie, that's exactly what you thought as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it'd be like a CSI type thing.
Yeah.
Very dry, unimaginative, do you know what I mean? But it wasn't, was it?
No, I think to the uninitiated, you just expect a sort of an 8-part cop show with a serial killer and, pretty much run-of-the-mill, sort of a very formulaic type of script. But True Detective, if anyone has never seen it, is very occult-based, and there's so many occult references in there that I found it quite surprising for an American show to have that amount of occult reference in there.
Definitely.
And I think one thing that we'll talk about later on as well is that how it kind of turns around the whole church thing, because it's set in Louisiana, isn't it, Freddie?
Yeah, in the old deep south. So it's scenic. It's quite picturesque, but also bleak at the same time.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's everything's kind of obviously swampland, isn't it? So, and I think it's an area where there isn't much work. Obviously, not everywhere, but especially the bayou, where it's all swampland and fishing, and there's derelict buildings. You get a very desolate, derelict feeling. It ties in really with our previous section on buildings, because they do explore a lot of derelict buildings, don't they, looking for clues. They
do. There's some really creepy old churches they go in, and that has that same vibe in there. When you go in there, it's got that, you can almost smell it, that sort of musty sort of old smell, and that look of a building where something happened. There's a particular scene where there's a church, isn't there? A really old church.
Mm. There is.
And they go inside this, you know what I mean? It's all falling apart and decaying, and it's got that vibe to it, So there's some really good, it's atmospheric. It's the cinematography is pretty good on it for a TV thing. It's pretty good cinematography on it.
Yeah. I think for those who've not seen it or don't know what the story is about, it's essentially two cops who get called to a murder, and the actual nature of the murder itself is very occult based. This girl is tied to the base of a tree with antlers tied to her head, and she's got all sorts of mystical symbols painted on her, and she's been stabbed a certain amount of times, and she's been raped and all sorts of stuff. It's grim, and they automatically just think it's a serial killer. But one of the other policemen in there, who's played by Matthew McConaughey, he's got the type of mind that really gets over. He sees it as a puzzle, doesn't he? Really, he's like he's like,
over analytical, bit of a philosopher.
Yeah, he's like scratches. It's like scratching an itch that never gets satisfied, and he just keeps scratching away at it to the point where they both realise that they've uncovered something that they shouldn't really be messing with, and that's when the story really starts to unfold. It takes about 3 episodes to really get into it. The first 3, you're kind of thinking, I don't really understand what they're talking about, because the dialect is really heavy duty, and the story doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But from the 4th episode in, there's so many occult references, and you've got these different cults involved, and so it's like you would think it's kind of like devil worship and ritual abuse and stuff. It goes into some really dark. The subject matter is very dark, and I would say it's not for the faint-hearted.
Oh, definitely not. It's very ritualistic in places as well. Do you know what I mean? There's a real strong sense of that. Yeah, and also the feeling of helplessness, the fact they're trying to uncover something, and there seems to be sort of blockades in the way, or people trying to prevent you from exposing something. It feels like they've tapped into something deep here, but couldn't quite get to the bottom of it. There's a lot of it's a very strange feel to it. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing, it just seems that everybody's in on it, doesn't it? It's got that sort of vibe.
I think that's where the fear is, really, because I think you as a person, you expect the police to be almost at the top of the food chain when it comes to crime. If something's going to happen, then you bring the police in to make sure that whoever's done the crime gets caught and pays the crime. However, what's happening in True Detective goes far beyond. It goes higher than the police. It goes into the FBI and the government, to a network. It's almost like the Illuminati, isn't it? They're all involved in this really sickening cult, which is linked to the King in Yellow, or the Yellow King.
That's it, yeah.
And did you know much about the King in Yellow or the Yellow King before?
Not a great deal, no. I looked it up since,
Yeah, but I was only aware of it through reading H.P. Lovecraft stuff, and obviously there's Hastur and Carcosa, and obviously this place keeps cropping up in True Detective called Carcosa, and Carcosa is actually a fictional city, which was first written in the short story An Inhabitant of Carcosa, written by Ambrose Bierce, which is from about 1891, and it's actually an ancient city on the shores of like this lake, but it's like a derelict city. It's very peculiar. The actual story itself isn't that long, and you can listen to it on YouTube. But that one story was a catalyst for tons and tons of other stories, all based around this place called Carcosa. And the Yellow King and Hastur and stuff. It appears in popular horror culture all the way through. So for it to appear in this, what I thought was just a bog standard cop show, really made my ears prick up. The Yellow King and the possibility of them trying to unlock almost like a portal to another dimension where this thing is, this sort of dormant evil. It's very dark.
It's a very dark show, isn't it? And it's acted well too. It's quite gripping because, like I say, it's quite sedate at first, isn't it? And there's a lot of twists and turns in it.
Yeah, well, you think the actors in there, they're proper A-list actors, aren't they? You've got Matthew McConaughey, who's just been in Interstellar, and then you've got Woody Harrelson as well, who's just been in all of the Hunger Games films. These are guys who you don't normally expect to find in TV shows. Season 2 actually comes out in April, and supposedly actors have been queuing up to get onto True Detective Season 2. And I think the next one is Colin Farrell and Vince Vaughn, is it? Vince Vaughn, I think.
Right.
They're the next guys in it, and it's about the occult followings or the occult foundations of the US transport system, whatever that means. I don't know if it's a continuation of the same cult, but because it's very apparent, isn't it, at the end of True Detective, that even though they got their guy, they only got one guy in a network of probably thousands.
Yeah, tip of the iceberg, basically. You know what I mean? They started to uncover it, but they hadn't really sort of the extent of it.
Yeah,
had not been uncovered.
Yeah, like there's the news report at the end, and obviously, spoilers alert for anyone who's not seen it. So if you want to go ahead and watch it, then don't listen to this next bit. But in the news report, when they've actually got their guy, it says that one of the main chaps who they knew was involved, has been cleared of any charges by the FBI and stuff. So that then the FBI is actually involved in this like cult as well, and it will probably go even higher than that. So you've got like that new world order, or like a kind of an Illuminati, who are all into this cult. And I think the most shocking thing is, which we also spoke about, is that the church are part of it as well, a part of the cult. They actually use the church as a front to actually get people to sacrifice for the cult.
Yeah. And it seems that everyone's tied in. It seems like the whole foundation of the country, or that area at least, it's all they're all in the same thing. It's a bit like, I suppose, what's going on over here. All the allegations coming out about the government and the authorities have been involved with nonsense and stuff like that. It's the same sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
A big cover up. Everyone knew about it, but no one said anything about it.
No, yeah. I mean, it made me think of that straight away, because I think it came out about the same time, just after Christmas. The stories of child abuse in the House of Lords and stuff that's been going on for years and years. Kids have been killed and all sorts, and it's only just coming out now. And if you watch something like True Detective, you can actually think, well, they're in a position where they can get away with it because they've got the power to bend the rules. They can get rid of anyone they want to get rid of. And I did think that the last scene at the house there was a little bit too Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What did you think?
It was a bit, yeah. The whole scene there was a bit. It went a bit over the top, I think, towards the end. It went almost like in the realms of horror, because at first it was horror, but not blatant horror. Do you know what I mean? It was more creepy rather than horror itself.
Yeah.
But I thought that, the last scene did go a bit in a different direction from the rest of it. It seemed a bit out of context to a degree, didn't it?
Yeah, the house was, I think from a prop building point of view, the house was amazing.
Stunning.
Thousands of VHS videotapes all piled up. The mind boggles as to what was on those tapes as well, bearing in mind that his family have been part of this cult for hundreds of years, and all the broken children's toys everywhere, and piles of children's clothes, and I think if you go back and look at it in slow time, the things you see in there really are disturbing.
It's very detailed, isn't it? And they showed one of the them watched one of the videos, didn't they? They saw one of the videotapes, so you saw a bit of what's on could be on them.
You do, yeah. It's one of those things that you don't see all of it, but your mind makes up for what you don't see. That for me brought a lot of memories back from forensics, because I used to work in audio and video forensics. I used to watch videos of things that essentially no person should ever see, and that is exactly what happens in True Detective when they play that video cassette back. It's some things you just can't unsee. And I think that digs really deeply into like the Lovecraftian kind of element of it as well, because it's these small things that just show you what the true nature of human beings are, and how it can drive you insane. Some things that your brain can never process, and at the same time never get rid of as well.
And some people are so twisted that you can't comprehend it. That their way of thinking is so twisted. Because like talking about hearing tapes and stuff like that, and I remember talking to this girl ages ago, and her father was on the jury for the Moors murders trial.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And they played the cassette recording. Of one of the last murders they did was Freddie Dan in court, and apparently her father had a breakdown after hearing that. It was so harrowing.
Yeah.
That he could not forget.
You can't.
And he said that the song, when you hear the song "Little Drummer Boy," which is played on that recording, you can't hear it. You have to switch it off. It brings it back.
There's a lot on the after the sort of the London bombings. I worked on some of the takedown of some of the Islamic extremist websites, and in all these execution videos, they went through a phase where they used to use the theme tune from Last of the Mohicans, which was really odd.
I thought a minute you were going to say Last of Summer Wine. That would have been really weird.
That would have been really weird. No, but they used the theme tune from Last of the Mohicans. That and it's really strange because every time I hear that now, I don't think of Daniel Day-Lewis running at me with the tomahawk. I think of some poor, some journalist in Baghdad getting his head cut off with a penknife. Essentially, that's what it's dark. It's dark, and I'm not a massive fan really of these shows. I suppose had True Detective didn't have any occult kind of setting or any link to, sort of Ambrose Bierce or H.P. Lovecraft, there's no way I'd have watched it because my brain's seen enough of that crap. I just don't want to take it anymore. However, just adding that element of the occult and something otherworldly, because at the end it does go a little bit kind of science fiction, doesn't it? It does, yeah. It's something that happens at the end, which I think if you didn't have any knowledge of the whole concept of H.P. Lovecraft and the different dimensions and these gods waiting to come back and take over the earth type, thing. If you didn't have any concept of that, you'd think, what the hell was that I'd just seen? You could interpret it in so many ways. And I think that's why, if you look back on the internet, the last episode gets a lot of bad reviews. People will just write, what the hell just happened in True Detective? What was all that about? Because they'd not sort of had that previous geeky insight that what we've got.
Definitely, and if people are expecting another CSI type program, they are going to be very confused by it. The thing is, it's quite an out of context title for a show like that. Do you know what I mean? Because if you see True Detective, like you say, you think it's going to be one of these. He's retired. It's his last day on the job, and they wanted to track down a serial killer. The usual kind of crap that comes out, but it's nothing like that at all. The title was misleading. You could have called it anything. It doesn't really tally up with what the program is about. There's a lot, there's a lot in there. And I say, like the last episode being confusing, I suppose it's the same thing with like The Prisoner when that came out, the original series. That blew a lot of minds because I don't think people had grasped the concept of it. And the same way with True Detective, there's hints at the direction it's going in all the way through the program, but it's only the last episode that is full on in that area. Do you know what I mean? It goes in that direction completely. Because there's quite a few twists and turns in the program, isn't there?
There is. I mean, I loved the ending. For me, it was the cherry on the cake. And
definitely,
if you were going to compare it to say something like Silence of the Lambs, when you've got the last scene at Buffalo Bill's house, when you're going through like this old fort from the Civil War, which is essentially Carcosa. You look at some of the things that are in there and it just makes your blood run cold. You know what I mean? There's bodies of babies hanging in sacks from like bits of driftwood. And did you see that pile of clothes, of children's clothes, that's been there for probably like hundreds of years?
Yeah.
There's thousands and thousands of people have been sacrificed there purely in the name of this cult. And that fort where it was filmed as well, I've forgotten what the fort is called, but it's actually an overgrown fort from the Civil War, the War of Independence, whatever they call it. And it is all overgrown like that. And, it's just so creepy. I mean, you can imagine that off the back of that, I think it's probably open as a tourist attraction. I would like to think so, but had it not been, you can imagine people definitely doing a bit of legend tripping there.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt, yeah. And it's crazy because the last episode is so different from the rest of them. It sort of takes it up a complete notch. Do you know what I mean? Almost like a different program, and it's a fantastic location. And the detail they put in with the props and things like that there.
Yeah,
it's visually stunning. It's creepy as anything.
I think if you go on the website, the guy who actually designed the props for True Detective has got his own website where you can see his work, because you don't get to see it long enough in the show to actually take it, to really truly take it all in. But like the sacrificial throne in that sort of domed area, with the hole in the ceiling. There's a picture of that from the film the film shots, and it literally is like the King in Yellow. There's all these skeletons and body parts hanging off this frame with all these yellow rags hanging off it. And he says he actually dyed the rags with all these different spices as well. So it all smelled magical as well, like they'd actually done rituals there. So everything had almost like a joss sticky, spicy smell to it. And then there's like a huge sacrificial altar, which is made like of slate and stuff, where they used to sacrifice all these, kids and stuff on it. It's just, talking about it, I feel uncomfortable talking about it, but it's such a good, it was executed so well that... Yeah, I think if you're into horror and bizarre and you've definitely got a geeky roots in anything sort of H.P. Lovecraft or Ambrose Bierce and Robert Chambers, you can't help but enjoy it.
No, definitely. I'm not a big fan of US TV. I find a lot of it very derivative, but this is something I did enjoy. A lot of it I find very, very run of the mill, very derivative, very very predictable. Pardon me. But this I found very enjoyable and gripping.
Yeah.
It's acted well. The story was well. There was much more. It's quite heavy stuff, subject matter for an American TV program. Usually they're quite fluffy in some ways. It's like things like Breaking Bad don't really interest me because there's no interesting context. It's just about drug dealers, and that doesn't really grab me. Whereas this has got an occult overtones to it. It's got conspiracy theories. It's almost got, like I say, a bit of the aliens almost as a hint of that as well at one point there, isn't there? There's some very strange things going on in this.
Yeah, different dimensions and portals and stuff.
Yeah, and all this sort of weird stuff and the cults, because there's so much of that going on in the background of it, and it comes to the forefront right at the end. That's what gripped me with it, because it wasn't one of these sort of run-of-the-mill shows. It was something with much more. There's a lot of substance to it.
Yeah, there's a bit of an anti-anecdote at the end. Like at the end of Jerry Springer, where he sits down and he gives you a little bit of spiel about, I don't know, after you've just seen some midgets fighting over some like lesbian or something, he always sits down and gives you a little bit of a piece of his mind. There's like an anti-anecdote at the end of True Detective, when they're both sort of sitting outside the hospital and he looks up at the sky, and you expect him to say something positive, but he actually says, if you look at the night sky, you can see that darkness has the monopoly over everything. You know what I mean? And amongst that darkness, there's like these tiny specks of light or hope, but the rest of it is just dark and shit, and nothing you ever do is ever going to make it any lighter. You know what I mean? And I just thought that was like, well, it's true, It
is. It's heavy, but it's true,
It is.
It's a bleak program, There's no happy ending to it. There's no jolliness to it. All those things get concluded. It doesn't end on a high note. Everybody slapping each other's backs and saying "Yeehaw, well done, dude," and all that. Awesome. There's none of that in it. It's dark, but that what they've done, they resolve this situation as much as they can. But there's a bigger thing. There's more out there. It's tip of the iceberg. There's this bleak feeling at the end of it that you can fight against this as much as you like, but you ain't going to defeat it.
Yeah, it's like it's like flogging a dead horse, basically. It's like banging your head against a brick wall. You can chip away at it, but ultimately you're never going to defeat it.
No, exactly. Yeah. And it's a great show because of that, because of there's a lot of philosophical elements to it, particularly with Matthew McConaughey's character. And it's quite, I suppose, pessimistic or nihilistic philosophies that he has there, which is, again, it's refreshing in a program like that to have a character who's so pessimistic. So I suppose, how do you say? What's the French philosophy? The sort of
I don't know, sort of.
Jean-Paul Sartre, that kind of thing, that sort of very negative.
Yeah, he is very negative, but you have to. Some of the things he says there, you kind of have to. You actually think, well, actually, I kind of agree with some of the stuff he's saying. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
if you strip away all of the, the religion and the meaning out of life, what ultimately are you left with?
Not a great deal.
Not a great deal. So. It's starting to make me a little bit depressed, Freddie. I might have to go and stick my head on that train track out of the back of the house.
or watch Meeting on the Bus. That cheers anyone up. That's a antidote for any sort of low
carry on camping. That's the one that cheers me up.
Camping,
Joshua Fiddler. Everything's a pound.
Stick them out, Barbara, you know.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to cover the second series as and when it gets released, and see if it's as good as, or definitely see what occult. Obviously, it's going to be occult based again, so it's going to be interesting to see what aspect of the occult it pursues.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all occult is bad. In fact, it's only been demonized by mainstream religion, so it's it's fear of the unknown, isn't it, I suppose?
Definitely, yeah. And I think the next series is definitely one that me and you both have a look at and definitely will feature on the show. But anyone who hasn't seen this, who has an interest, I think that people listening to this show would enjoy it. Forget the name, because it does sound like a CSI type thing. But True Detective actually is more than it sounds.
That's it. We've mentioned a few spoilers in this past segment, but we can't recommend it enough. Go out and watch True Detective.
All your life, not all your love, all your hate, all your memory, all your pain, it was all the same thing. It was all the same dream, a dream that you had inside a locked room. A dream about being a person.
Now, to complement our review of True Detective, we have a very special reading once again by our very own E.R. Perkins of Robert W. Chambers' Cassilda's Song.
Along the shore the cloud waves break. The twin suns sink beneath the lake. The shadows lengthen in Carcosa. Strange is the night where black stars rise, and strange moons circle through the skies. But stranger still is lost Carcosa. Songs that the Hades shall sing, where flap the tatters of the king, must die unheard in dim Carcosa. Song of my soul, my voice is dead. Die thou unsung as tears unshed shall dry and die in lost Carcosa. Cassilda's Song in The King in Yellow, Act 1, Scene 2.
And we come to the end of another Mystic Menagerie podcast. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed your time with us. And we certainly had an interesting time here, interesting discussion. We should be back in February with some more exciting things and more discussions and lots of stuff, lots of the spookiness and bizarreness. So keep your world as weird as you can, keep life as strange as you can. And we and Dan shall be back next month, won't we, Dan?
Yeah, we will. It's been a great first show of 2015, and hopefully this time next year we'll be into double figures on shows, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think we will do. Keep you in touch soon with the Patreon and everything else, so we'll see you in February.
Thanks for supporting the show, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.